Get your edgelords ready, because we are going all in.
My favorite.
There you go. So something like that.
Okay. What's up, oddities? Welcome back to another Odds of War. Today we are doing a faction focus on the Drukhari, the Dark Elves of Space. I am your host today. My name's Tim, as you probably know. Joined today by Matt and Nick.
Yo.
What's up?
So, guys, the Drukhari, one of the best factions out there, probably.
Right.
In
I don't
Fill Team.
think I've ever heard of them before. I think maybe.
Yeah. Wait. Are these?
Yes.
Wait. These are Eldar?
Are they?
Right?
No,
they
we
some,
can't
yeah.
say.
This is Eldar, isn't it? That you paint
Yeah,
a darker color.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're right.
Yeah, these are the Dark Eldar, but we can't call them that. They're called the Drukhari in the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I was confused.
The Dark Elves in Space, the Drukhari.
Yeah.
What do you guys? I'm obviously a player of them. They're the first for me. I picked them back up in 3rd edition when I was a wee lad, and I went into the game store and I saw a Raider, and I was like, "That looks cool. I'm gonna pick that up." And then my friends are all playing Space Marines at the time, said they're bad.
Right.
And,
Ouch.
And I picked up
That's
Necrons.
And
instead.
boy, could they see into the future.
Yeah. Well,
Space Marines on top.
Yeah. Wow, it's come full circle.
Wow.
But seriously, my first love probably in this game and Kill Team
Don't tell his
specifically
wife.
as well. What do you guys think of as people who have probably played against them when I've played them?
We're talking 40K at this point, or
Yeah,
Just all of it.
4K Kill Team in general.
They are
What do you like about them?
hypermobile, hyper fragile.
Yeah.
and,
They're glass cannony.
They shoot a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like a lot.
Yeah.
they do. Fair enough.
Yeah. They're I mean, he nailed it there with the hypermobile. They're, like I said, they're glass cannons, so they hit really hard, but then they're boom.
Yeah.
They're easy to kill. And I mean, they do have some special rules that make them a little tougher to kill. And which we'll get into later with faction specific stuff. They do have a particular branch that's a little more tough than you might be comfortable with, but for the most part, they're super fragile, but they hit hard to counteract that fragility.
Well, and to touch on a nuance of the word you used there, I don't know if they hit hard, like they're not hitting with like they do have dark lances and stuff like that. They
Sure.
hit for D6, but the bulk of their weaponry is death by 1,000 cuts style.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's their
Yeah.
whole. They enjoy causing pain and they enjoy doing it as frequently as possible.
Right.
So
Right.
splinter weaponry is their jam.
Exactly. That's a good segue. So let's talk about sort of the background of the Dark Eldar, where they come from.
Sure.
So they come from the Dark City, known as Kamara.
Wow, really original there, guys.
Or Kamora. Or
Actually, is it? Well, I mean, in your opinion, is it Kamara or is
I
it
always
Kamora?
call it Kamara.
I would
And
say
then I heard
Kamara.
some people pronounce it Kamora, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's Kamora.
Well, maybe they really like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Maybe. Yeah.
I see what you
Yeah.
did there.
Well,
Nice.
it was Sodom and Gomorrah. So maybe Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, they're probably into
Okay.
sodomy.
They're
Realistically.
probably.
Whoa. This is a family show.
If it's a family show, I can't talk too much about the Dark Eldar.
And that's all for our video about Dark Eldar.
That's all about the lore.
Turning to Dark Elder after dark.
So just Cliff Notes version, right? There's the giant overarching umbrella of the Eldar race. Something happened called the Fall, where Slaanesh came into being.
They birthed.
Yeah,
they birthed Slaanesh.
How did that happen, perchance?
So the Eldar, having conquered the galaxy, slowly fell into interests and pleasure and hedonistic displays that were completely over the top because they really
Unnecessary, you might say.
right. Yeah, they had achieved
Eldar
everything
are
else in terms of
unnecessary.
exactly.
They were space rabbits in a very fertile land.
Right. Yeah, they had
that
no
went
competition.
Super hard.
So they literally basically created this chaos god of excess from their own just over the top excess.
Okay.
Whose birthing screams killed millions of Eldar.
Thank the Emperor.
Yeah, the three that split, not counting the Harlequins because they're a little weird.
Whoa.
They're weird?
Whoa.
Are the Exodites? They went to planets to ride dinosaurs, and we don't see them at all.
Awesome.
Yeah, maybe one day. The Craft Worlders, who are like, this is going to get weird. Let's build our big ships and flee
And fly away.
and practice puritanical practice where we can only do one thing for so long, and then we switch it up.
Sure.
And then the Dark Eldar, or the True Kin, are actually what the Eldar would have continued to be had this timeline gone on. And they created Kamara inside the webway, inside this interdimensional sort of space that's used for faster than light travel and yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And wherein they would be protected because they're kind of in between the warp and real space. They'd be protected from Slaanesh, and they were able to continue to indulge in whatever they wanted to do. So they split into 3 groups, I guess, when all this kind of went down. The Cabals, which are based off of sort of your typical like gang style hierarchy that are ruled by the Archons, and then the Cabalites that make up the Cabals, of which there are Trueborn that are actually natural-born Eldar, and like the Vat-born Cabalite warriors.
Right.
You have the Witches, which are like your gladiators that provide the pain and the sort of the craziness that the Dark Eldar need to kind of feed their souls that are slowly being lost to Slaanesh. And then the Covens, which are like the creepy dudes that hide out in the labs and rebuild you if you are found. Even if they find a fraction of like your earlobe, they can construct you back to...
Why is it got to be a creepy dude in the lab, Tim?
I don't know. They're just all creepy. I've read the one Dark Eldar Black Library book, and even the Archons are like creeped out by the homunculi and the racks and everything.
That's
like
saying
that.
a lot
So,
when you're in a literal world of torture and you can creep out like someone else there. Like
that really speaks to just how dark and weird they are. Yeah, because when your city is the dark city of Kamara, where the main attraction is fighting pits, and you're like, yeah, this is a great time to backstab my friend.
Yeah.
And then the person that you're most creeped out by is the doctor.
Right.
And you're like, ugh.
So as we talked about, with orcs last time, orcs, when they get into a fight, that's the end game, right? They're just happy to be there.
Yeah.
The Drukhari are usually fighting because they've launched a real space raid where they've actually gone into real space from the webway. They attack some sort of unsuspecting settlement, and then they try to get back, with
prisoners.
whoever they've captured, prisoners, right, to take back to Kamara. So, the Covens do it to kind of practice their dark weirdness. The Witches do it to practice their fighting, and the Cabals just want people to take back. So that's sort of why they fight. The big gameplay mechanic that they all benefit from is power from pain. So we can jump right into that bad boy.
True to the name there.
So back in previous editions, this has kind of changed a lot in 40K. It reflects obviously now the 8th edition rule set, which actually kind of favors pushing the Dark Eldar slowly into your face, I guess, sort of
into combat.
Into combat,
absolutely.
As each turn progresses, they get more and more powerful.
If you think about it thematically, it makes perfect sense for a pirate raiding party, right? You're gonna take your ship, shoot the other ship down, then get close enough to board them, take prisoners, and leave. Right.
Well, and
So,
that's what
thinking about it,
that's what I like the most actually about the Power from Pain table is it's sort of informs you as to their wider play style. So, turn 1, it's just the 6-up feel no pain, or the 6-up ignore wounds roll.
Let's pause right there. Just,
I mean, that's
Iron,
a whole
Iron Hands and Leviathan look at you and they're like, "Wait, you get more than that? That's a thing."
Yeah. But that's just like your standard. Like this is. We're maybe a little more tough than you might initially think.
Yeah, because we like getting hurt. It's fun sometimes to get hurt.
Yeah. And then after that, it becomes the eager to flay, right? And then so they re-roll failed charges.
And advances.
And so then it's like, okay, now we're starting to pick up. Turn 2 is when you want to be sort of landing in combat.
Closing the gap.
Right. And then 3, you get to Flinsing Fury.
Yep.
Right. +1 to hit in combat. So now it's like, boom, we're in your face. We're having a go at it in
big.
combat. Yeah.
And also really good because across the board, they are elves, so they're naturally skilled at things. So 3+ weapon skill, 3+ ballistic skill, pretty much across the board.
Right.
I just said that with such derision.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to kind of
it's
look
a
down.
classic.
Unlike,
Eldar
it's a
your
classic.
nose.
We're just
Classic
better than
Eldar.
everyone
Okay.
else.
So anyway, so basically, every model you're going to be using in Kill Team is all of a sudden hitting on 2s in battle round 3, which is big.
Right.
Specifically
charging
for
not.
combat.
Yeah.
Specifically for combat, right.
Then round 4, emboldened by bloodshed. So you're going to reroll field nerve test. So now they're like, we've got this under control. Like we're like, we're feeling good. Their morale is high. And then 5 is Mantle of Agony. So they start detracting from the leadership of enemies around them.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because at that point, again, thematically, they have now boarded you. they've captured some of your friends. Like
Right.
the morale has suddenly dropped at that point.
Now they're breaking you just by their sheer presence.
Yeah. So I'll say personally, I think the first 3 in the Power from Pain are obviously the most useful. I don't know what you guys think, but the first 3 bonuses, and these are cumulative, of course, guys. So I mean it stacks.
I'll say right now, even if it were just inured to suffering, that would already be just great.
Yeah.
Because think about it, and you know, if you think about it this way, over the course of 5 rounds, you are getting 5 extra chapter tactics.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone else gets 1. Some will get 2 baked into 1 kind of thing, but that's about it. So this is just gravy on top of the already good chapter tactics or obsessions that they have, which we'll be talking about later. But
and that actually, like, when personally for me, when I go over the obsessions later on, they almost, like, a couple of them almost seem not like bland or underpowered, but just like maybe not as exciting as certain other things are. But yeah, that's because it's being layered on top of the Power from Pain table, which is already such a powerful mechanic.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, the first 3 are probably the most, I think, appealing to me. And it's important to note too. Eager to Flay says reroll the dice when determining how far the model moves when it advances or charges. So it doesn't say anything about a failed charge.
Oh, okay.
So you can try to cheat out a little bit of extra movement if you got a short charge there. But I think it's actually different in how it's worded in 40K. I think it does say failed charges.
Yeah.
So you can try to eke out a little bit extra movement there, and then Flensing Fury is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, just like a flat plus to hit anywhere is going to be great. And again, that like turn 2 to turn 3, that is where you're going to traditionally be landing in combat for the most part. I mean, in certain scenarios, you're going to be getting turn 1 charges and things like that. But turns 2 and 3 are really your big combat turns. And so those are like perfectly timed to being like, they're going to land on turn 2, and then turn 3, if they're still in, if they haven't killed whatever, and they haven't been killed, they're going to clear it. They're going to clear the rest of the hurdle.
I think it sets good pacing, and it gives you a skeleton like array of how to handle your army or your kill team.
Yeah.
Like turn 1, you should be focused on probably whittling down the opponent with gunfire, so that way, because in the off chance you do get hit, do get wounded, you still have that 6-up feel no pain to back you up from inured to suffering. So you can take that exchange of fire at the outset, and then you go to phase 2. You don't really want to be in combat in phase 2, right? In round 2,
right? Because
you're not getting that flat +1. You're going to get the charges off, which will be nice, but really it's more setting up your positioning to get those charges on turn 3. And the nice thing, and it's interesting you mentioned that the first 3 are the most interesting to you for Drukhari, because I would think most kill team battles do probably end around turn 3 or turn 4.
Yeah.
So you are.
Well, it's been decided by then, probably.
Right. You're getting the 3 best things off that table.
Yeah.
Pretty much every battle you're playing in. You know what I mean? So.
Well, I mean, just to give credit where credit is due, let's say you're in turn 4, the reroll nerve tests is huge, cannot be ignored, because usually by turn 4 both sides have suffered large casualties, and you're probably taking break checks at that point on round 4 for both sides if you haven't already broken. And if you have broken, then everybody across your entire team is taking nerve checks, and you're going to have modifiers on them because of models out of action or shaken. So you're going to be like, that reroll a failed nerve test is really clutch if you can have it. And then same thing on, let's say it goes to round 5 and your opponent is having to take those nerve checks. That Mantle of Agony could be just the thing that pushes them from passing and clutching the game out to clearing it the rest of the way.
Right. Yeah. So Power from Pain, obviously huge, applies to all the models. We'll talk about the other one, I think, when we cover witch cults, because that's kind of specific to them, about the combat drugs. Another interesting thing, it's not really listed on here for the Drukhari powers, but let's just talk real quick about the weaponry, because like a lot of Eldar, the weapons are specialist weapons, right? You're not going to have a bolter that's kind of like your generalist, good at everything. You got, and the thing with Dark Eldar, I think, or Drukhari, that really kind of sets them apart from, say, the Craft Worlds or the Harlequins, is they have a lot of redundancy in their weapons. Usually it's either going to be a poison weapon or it's going to be a dark light based weapon. So the poison weapons are unique, I think, to them, at least in Kill Team. There are some other poison weapons, I think, in 40K that do a similar thing, but they're always going to wound you on a 4+, regardless of toughness.
Yeah,
So
which is great if
yeah.
you're shooting into a toughness 5 Death Guard model, but not so great if you're shooting into a toughness 3 or a toughness 2 model.
But against toughness 4, it's useful too, right? It would be the equivalent of shooting a bolter into an orc or something
right. Well,
like
yeah,
that.
the toughness 4. I mean, the entire game is balanced around tough 4. Or strength 4, whichever way you want to look at it, right? So going against tough 4, you're like, okay, it's standard. But if you're shooting into tough 3 and tough 2, then you're like, well, this is losing efficiency.
Which is why you bring so many grots.
That's it, man.
Just
One day,
all
soon,
grots.
Soon.
We'll do it. Yeah.
Just watch the Drukhari player crumble under the weight of it.
Well, and they have strength 3 pistols, so I mean, like, but if you're shooting into toughness 5, like the Death Guard, then all of a sudden you're like, this is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is one thing that's pretty unique to them.
Or custodians.
And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have the really heavy hitting dark light weapons, which across the board, regardless of range, it's going to be your strength 8, AP -4, and a D6 damage.
Right.
Yeah,
in Kill Team, you have blast pistol, you have blaster, and you have a dark lance. But
and all those
the range will be different.
It's a meltagun at range 36, right? Essentially.
Without the
no
damage.
Yeah. But to be fair, I mean, in Kill Team, that would be a tad excessive, anyways, right? I mean, So
well, and I mean, but that's the thing, though, is you have your anti-infantry gun, and then you have your anti-everything else gun, and of course now Kill Team is all infantry anyway. But in 40K, full 40K, but also here in Kill Team, that D6 damage is huge.
It's massive.
Huge. And then, of course, then the -4 AP, also huge, because -4 AP, nothing is getting a save unless you're a 2-up
or you
like
have an
Terminator.
invulnerable.
Yeah, well,
like
but that's what I mean.
Thousand
Like
Suns or
the armor modifier, you're not getting your armor save.
Right.
You're just not. Unless, again, you have a 2-up save like a Terminator, which is, later on.
Yeah. So the thing I don't like about the dark light weapons is the fact that they can be a little swingy.
Yeah.
It is one shot that you have to hit and wound with. Granted, you are punching through the save most of the times.
You will be wounding on 2s more often than not.
Yeah, but then the damage is, it could be 6, and then you're basically guaranteeing an out of action result,
or it could be a 1,
and then it's no different than the other ones. The reason why I like the dark light weaponry really is because it really puts that model specifically as a big target in your kill team.
Yes.
And so people will fear the dark light weaponry, in my experience, even if it's not really getting the shots off, just because of the potential that it has to basically one shot anything in the game.
Right.
And
at range too.
Right. Yeah. And with Dark Eldar, that's really the only multi-damage shooting they have available, I believe, in the whole kill team kind of series is through the dark light weapon. So and only if you really stretch it can you take more than, I think, 2 or 3 maybe dark light weapons in a list.
And you're including blasters as part
blasters.
Of it. I was about to say So
I think like in a Cabalite list, you can take a dark lance, a blaster, and a blast pistol if you really want to max it out. But I think at that point it's probably overkill too.
Yeah.
Well, it depends. It depends on the matchup.
Yeah,
right?
It depends on the matchup. And again, that's the whole roster versus list thing. Which, speaking of, guys, if you look down in the description, we're going to have a variety of Dark Eldar based rosters or lists for you to peruse at your leisure. So we might reference those from time to time. You can find those down in the description below.
To be clear on those two, they're designed for a couple different reasons. Like some are designed to be minimal purchases along the way. Some are designed to be a little bit have more of a flavorful edge to them. So while we're talking through it, you'll see kind of the idea behind them. But
yeah. And from a kill team building and cost perspective and stuff like that, I think Dark Eldar are Drukhari are a pretty easy.
Edit that out, please.
Pretty easy kill team to get into.
I'll edit in like a buzzer sound every time Dark Eldar.
Drukhari.
Drukhari. It's like
a haka.
Or no, you remember Jumanji, the movie with
Robin
Williams and the.
You mean Jumanji, the movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
Yeah, and Kevin Hart.
The original Jumanji movie had like a Jumanji chant song.
Did it?
And what I did there is
I don't remember this.
You referenced it with that.
No one's gonna get that.
Okay. Well, no one is because it'll probably be edited out.
So what I was gonna say. What I was gonna say is the each of the factions, their troops choices, the Cabalite Warriors, the Witches, and the Racks, you can buy as a single box, and you'll have your kill team. With the exception of Racks, because weirdly enough, they only sell 5 Racks in a box.
Which is fine because they're not considered part of the normal kill team choice.
Right, yeah.
Well, actually, I would like to interrupt here for a second. Now,
well, you are, so.
Yeah, well, I would like to, and I will. Actually, an interesting thing, there seems to be this weird, like, 2 philosophies about the expansions, right? And you just exemplified one of them, Nick, where you're like, well, they're not part of normal kill team,
right?
But the Elites expansion is just part of normal kill team now that it's out. Now, commanders are specifically special because you have to have missions that specify that you can take a commander, but no missions specify like you use elites in this mission. So elites are just they're just in the, so it's not like, you can't say like, this mission can't have elites. It just, they're just part of it now. So they're just an expansion, whereas commanders are that slightly different thing where it's like, so my point being that there's been whole new, like with elites, like the Custodes were introduced. You can't just be like, well, okay, we're playing core manual, so you just can't bring Custodes. It's like,
so first off, that was definitely the moment in the anime where Matt pushes his glasses up and the lens flare occurs. So second off, every game of 40K or tabletop is always a discussion, right? So you can always have that conversation with your opponent ahead of time and be like, hey, do you want to play without chapter tactics? Do you want to play with elite models? Do you want to play with elite models but only 100-point maximum? Like, that's the beauty of Kill Team that I think that has been really nice that they've added these expansions or have fleshed out upon it, is that you can play Kill Team now in so many different variations. Like, one thing I really want to do on the channel at some point is Arena.
Yes, I would like to do Arena as well.
It's just it's Space Hulk, baby. That's where we're going.
It's an exceptionally pricey expansion.
Doors.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I would say, at least in defense of the Racks, especially because I'm going to be talking about them because they're my favorite, them getting introduced in elites, I wouldn't call them elite type units. They're not.
Really? You wouldn't call something that's typically a troop's choice an elite unit?
No, yes, correct.
Cool.
Like the Grotesques, obviously,
sure.
and stuff like the bigger models. But the Racks themselves, I think, I don't know why they didn't come out when they first did the Kill Team announcement. I guess Drukhari had enough models or whatever. But
something.
Yeah.
It's probably they needed a little bit extra for the elite expansion.
Yeah.
Or maybe they felt that the Racks being a slightly higher toughness might have kind of outweighed the overall options.
Yeah.
But it definitely left the core book with very little to build off of. And I'm sure we'll jump more into this later, but I had a lot of trouble just building a single roster of 200 points at normal level with no elites for just
20
the Cabal.
models, you mean?
20 models, yeah. I mean, even at 20 models, with the amount of options that the Cabal have, it's literally Cyberite and Cabalite Warrior.
Right.
I could put every single iteration of every model's loadout into that list and still have like 20 points left over.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So it's one of those things that I think lends Drukhari to be such an interesting faction, is that, and we were talking about this beforehand, they're built to be a multifaceted army composed of 3 separate parts, most likely.
Yes.
Right? And definitely on 40K, that's the way they roll.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in Kill Team, you could probably build a pretty fun roster with components of all
totally
3.
Mixing all 3.
And then you're like, okay, well, I'm playing against this particular list. Let's throw some witches at them. Yep. We'll make a witch list out of this roster with what I have there and some of the mercenaries.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah, fair. Well, I guess we'll jump into the obsessions and stuff.
So last video, right? We did orcs, and it was just sort of like orcs stat lines for the units.
Yeah.
Then talking tactics, and talking clan cultures, all sort of like mixed up together. We're going to be doing this one a little bit different because of the nature of Dark Eldar, or Drukhari.
Thank you.
Sort of mixed up. It doesn't make sense it's not going to flow nicely like that. So we're gonna sort of focus on each sort of branch of the Drukhari, and then talk about their stats, talk about their obsessions, talk about maybe particular particular tactics pertaining to them, both in the gameplay like tactic for 1 CP, but also sort of just a broader sense of like what they provide to the team.
Sure.
All right. So, with that being said, let's take a little break before we go to that.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. So we're going to dive right into the obsessions next. I think it's a good place to start.
Baba Booey.
Yes. The Drukhari have probably the most chapter traits of anyone else in the book. Well, clearly they do. They have like 14 or something.
Yeah, and again, it's this whole 3 armies in one system.
But they
definitely 10.
Yeah, 10. Okay,
the number we
that's
agreed
fine.
upon before you started recording.
Yeah, that's fine. My eyes went cross-eyed there, and I was just like, 14 sounds good.
How do I count?
Yeah,
the Tim Anderson story.
Yeah, well, it's hard. We'll start with the Cabals. They're probably, I think, the most straightforward of all.
I mean, let's be real.
No, they're not, but we'll get to that later. So the Cabals, right? They're your pirates. They're your corsairs. They're coming in hot on their vehicles that don't exist in Kill Team, probably for good reason. And
definitely for good reason.
And man, when they put like Venoms in Kill Team or something like that,
you realize that's just 500 points of 40K, right? Like
yeah.
Kill Team vehicles,
breaking
it out.
Small 40K game.
But they're your pirates, your raiders. They come in. They got the most firepower of any of the.
Yeah, they're the shootiest of the
definitely
of the factions.
And they definitely can support some of the best numbers. I think their basic troop is the cheapest of the 3. If I want to say at the top.
Yeah,
of the
7
that
points
sounds
for
right.
a Cabalite
7 points
warrior.
for a Cabalite warrior. So
what's a witch? 8.
I think 8.
Yeah,
which
I
is
think
8,
a witch is 8.
and Iraq is 9. So there we go. So real quick stats for
7,
Cabalite warrior.
Chaos.
It's going to be a 7-inch move, which is nice. They're good and fast. It's going to be a 3+ weapon skill. It's going to be a 3+ ballistic skill.
By the way, ballistic squill.
Squill.
Also, I'm going to put, when we're talking about these different units, I'm going to put
it at the bottom again.
Put the stat line against there. So
Right
if he
across
somehow
his face.
already
Yeah,
messed
right
up the
across my
stat line,
face.
you will know.
I will not mess up the stat line.
He's gonna
Strength
mess it up.
3, toughness 3, 1 attack, leadership 7,
Except
5+. Well, except for the Sybarite.
Sybarite?
For the captain.
Sybarite or Sybarite?
I call them Sybarites.
Kamara or Kamora?
Sybarite never sounded because it has cyber in it. I don't know. It just sounds.
That will be edited out.
sounds weird to me.
it's Cyberite.
And a 5+ armor save, which if you count from turn 1, power from pain, they have a 5 or 6+ to ignore wound.
Right. So 5 up save, 6 up.
So they're fast.
They're elves.
They're likely to hit you in both combat and in shooting. They are frail with their 5+ armor, and they're 3 toughness. They're not very strong in combat. They're not likely not to wound you unless you are equally frail, like a guardsman or something like that.
Right.
Their leadership is actually pretty decent.
It's middle
yeah.
yeah.
I would say 6 is probably like your average.
6
Joe.
is the guardsman.
Yeah, so
farmer.
7's a little bit better.
Yeah.
And 1 attack, whatever. So they come.
Yeah, they're not combat focused, is what you're saying.
They come bog standard with a Splinter Rifle, which we've always sort of touched about, but it's a 24-inch rapid fire 1 weapon, so 2 shots in half range, which is good because you're already ignoring the long range penalty as is, and you're getting an extra shot. And then it's poisoned, so 4+ to wound anything regardless of the toughness.
And no AP and damage.
And no
1.
AP and damage 1. Yeah.
So it's your standard anti-infantry gun.
Basically,
with a twist.
1,000 needles is sort of the whole approach.
Right. Or 2 in the case of 1 rifle.
Right, exactly.
2 needles.
In their head, though, they're like, man, I'm shooting so many needles.
Yeah. So that's the gist of your basic guy. You can make him a Cabalite gunner, I think, for an extra point, and then you can take one of their special weapons or their heavy weapons. You can take 1 special weapon and 1 heavy weapon per list, and then
much like a Marine
much like a
faction,
Marine
and they've kept that consistent across most. So.
And then you have the whatever we're going to call it, Sybarite for me, the leader that's going to have your leadership 8. It's going to have an extra attack.
I would like to say it's Cyberit.
Well,
Sybarite.
Put your votes down in the comments for how you pronounce it phonetically. We'll be sure to try to interpret it, and then the loser will have that written across their face during the editing portion of this video. So
I will write it across their face during the editing so that they can comment after I've uploaded it.
Well, we'll make the secondary video, the re-release, the remastered edition, where you dub over every time someone
Odds of
says
War remastered edition.
That's what you want, right? That's the.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No.
So so on the board, the Cabalites, they are
Cabalites.
The Cabalites. They're probably like we said, the most shooty. They're
Okay.
mobile, so they're good about you can move them where you want, more or less. And generally with the 7-inch move and a 24-inch rapid fire weapon, you're going to be able to hit something on the first turn.
Yeah.
It's not going to be anything great, but it'll be something.
Yeah, I will say though, interestingly, right, with the higher than average movement, their guns are rapid fire, so they're actually Cabals specifically are disincentivized from advancing. Yeah, which would make them even faster.
Right. It would, but the nice thing about Kill Team being the small board that it is, advancing is not critical for anything other than a blaster, maybe, which is range 12.
Blaster's range 18.
18, even better. So, and again, that's their whole motif, right? They want to shoot at range, maybe from behind cover. Well, of course, from behind cover, and pick off wounds.
No, just standing in the middle of a hallway.
Yeah.
Come at me, bro.
Yeah.
Pew pew.
Orc style.
Right. Wait, we are talking about orcs, right?
Yeah.
Somehow we were talking about them again.
The dark Orctar.
Yeah. Ooh, I like it.
Kamara.
Oh Jesus.
So
Kamarwa.
There it was.
We got it in 2 takes. That's the
Kamarwa. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure a wall has been inside of the webway before.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Those crazy hooligans will get everywhere. It's like a little roach infestation.
Get out of here.
Is this how you want? Do you want orcs? Because this is how you get orcs.
So the reason why you're taking the Cabalites is probably for the weapons. I would imagine.
Right.
So they have
that
access.
or their sexy, sleek, elven bodies.
I mean, if we're gonna talk about that, the aesthetic of the Cabalites is probably my favorite because, like,
the Dark Eldar range in general, that's why I chose them in the first place. I think they probably have the best looking range that GW makes. They are very.
See, I wasn't going to go that far.
They are
but
very
Tim decided to jump in on
finicky
that,
and very hard to transport and package, and you guarantee that something's going to snap off.
If you like a struggle and a constant state of anxiety, boy, is this the army for you.
Yeah. You want to feel how much plastic hurts when it actually pokes through your skin.
Have you ever tried to move 20 witches and then realize when you reach for it, you've now stabbed your hand with like 70 little bits?
But I guess that's the whole thing, right? I mean, if the models are causing you pain, it's really the whole. Yeah,
it's
nice.
really you're just sticking with the fluff.
Wow, that's like really
thematic.
meta.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Wow, I'm gonna have to think about that.
So back to what I was saying about the aesthetic. They have one of their head options that's literally just like a flat mask that looks like a lensed covering. I don't know what it is about that, but that just looks so cool. Like with my Tau models, I've been wanting to like shave off the front visor portion there to replicate that. But I remember seeing when you first built them like a while ago, that design is just beautiful.
The super
it's sleek.
Super sleek. The Cabalites, they're the equal opportunity. They got male and female models. They got a bunch of different head options. You can go sans helmet or with helmet. They got a bunch of different helmet types. So it's cool. They got bits and spikes and chains and all kinds of weird stuff you can hang off of them, but it doesn't do anything extra, but it looks cool.
Yeah. Well, I swear one of these hours here we're going to get to actually talking about how to play them.
We're
and
not
stuff,
going
but
it won't happen.
We're just
not
gushing about them.
Yeah. So back to Grots.
Yeah. Back to Grots.
So Grots, the best point for point.
The anti-Dark Eldar tech. The Grot.
Funnily enough, we will talk about them.
Yeah. So the weapon options at range are what makes or breaks your Cabalite kill team.
Yeah.
So and what they have available to them, heavy weapon wise, you have the Dark Lance and you have the Splinter Cannon.
Now that thing. Let's talk about that.
Splinter Cannon.
Okay.
That is my choice.
We've talked about the Dark Lance a bit now with all the Dark Light weapons, but let's talk about that Splinter Cannon. That thing does a surprising amount of work on the table.
Yeah. So it is 36-inch range, which is really
great
nice.
Great range.
It's rapid fire 3. So effectively at 18 inches, you have
six shots.
3 Cabalite warriors worth of fighting, or shooting rather, and you can make your heavy weapon guy a sniper specialist, which I've done before on a kill team with the reroll the ones, and really there you're kind of playing up to the Drukhari strength, which I think is not so much, like I said, the heavy hitting wounds, but the
death by 1,000
weight of death by 1,000 cuts. We're just forcing a bunch of saves. They're gonna fail one. You're gonna if you get them on a flesh wound, then it's easier to take them out of action on the next one. You're just forcing saves basically.
Right, and that again, it's a splinter weapon, so it has that wound on 4-up. Yeah. So again, just like you said, just puts a hail of fire downfield, and at the end of the day, all things Warhammer, right? It's a dice game, so you're talking about averages.
More dice, better.
Yeah, right, exactly. So the more dice you can throw, the higher your likelihood of actually taking out the target.
Yeah.
Plus, thematically, it's really cool to think about this. Like, all these little tiny rifles are just plinking off a couple like thorns, kind of like the Needler from Halo.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, this heavy walks around the corner with
He's
one.
got two Needlers.
Yeah, he's just laying in with those, and it's just spikes flowing across. Like that's just thematically awesome.
Well, and that's exactly what I see in my head is this moment of like you see those guys like take a few pot shots and then they tuck back and then like out from behind like a bombed out car
Well, and the nice thing about the Splinter Rifle being a heavy weapon but still being rapid fire is you can move and shoot it without penalty.
Right.
And with that 7-inch move, you can really get into that position where maybe you start behind cover or whatever, then you move out and you can shoot and basically you're gonna probably outrange whatever your target.
7-inch movement plus the 18-inch half range is pretty much a guaranteed 6 shots for the majority of that game.
Yeah.
Unless they are very
they
small.
Deployed at the very back,
which at
out
that
of line of
point,
sight, or you deployed far back, and
But and this is the one sticking point that I will throw upon it as a negative to the Splinter Cannon versus something like a Dark Light weapon. Kill Team is weird with weight of dice, right? I could roll 10 shots, like we've seen in previous videos. You rolled 9 attacks against one of my guys, right? You've reduced, if it's a one wound model,
one injury roll.
all it takes is that one injury roll, right? And all those other attacks are meaningless.
Yep.
So you really, and this is where kind of the weaponry for the Cabal and just the Drukhari in general is kind of lacking, is that there's not a lot of multi-damage weaponry at range.
I agree. I'll offer a little bit of a devil's advocate and think that that's almost how you want to play them, is with the mass splinter fire kind of approach that you have to take with Cabals. It actually behooves you to just give a bunch of things a bunch of flesh wounds instead of trying to take something out of action, because then you're forcing those nerve checks, right?
Yep.
You're making
Which
the things
then comes
hit
in with
less.
that power from pain.
Right, exactly. So you're making the things hit you worse, which already is an added bonus, and then in the next turn you're sort of finishing them off.
Yeah.
So I think if you're doing like a massed splinter fire type build with Cabal, if you get flesh wounds on like 4 or 5 models on your opponent's kill team, that's almost better than taking like 2 out of action and nothing else.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned that, because that's actually the list that I posted down below.
Yeah.
So, how about that?
And I'd like to say, just as far as like you said, kill team is weird with that, and maybe the way to play them is way to fire. I think that's just actually a really big benefit of kill team now in standard 40K. Generally speaking, of course there are caveats to this, but generally speaking, the prevailing wisdom is moderate AP, damage 2, high rate of fire.
Yes.
Right. That's that's the gold standard.
Yeah.
Is
the
that
autocannon
middle of the
variant.
roll,
Yeah.
middle of the road profile.
Yep.
Whereas here in Kill Team, it's like, you might not take a bunch of Dark Lances in 40K because you're like, well, that's a waste of points basically, because it'd be better if I took
The
this
disintegrator
other
cannons, which are the damage 2 profile.
But here in Kill Team, having even just a single Dark Lance, you're like, well, this thing's going to do some work.
Yeah.
Like when it lands, ooh boy.
And that can target any model on the board. You don't have that character protection like you do in 40K.
Right.
So, taking that leader out turn 1 is tremendous. And that Dark Lance has the best chance of doing it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Dark Lance real quick and the blaster and all that stuff too, because obviously they have a place. Anytime I've played with the Dark Lance, and this is why I'm not really a huge fan of it, it kind of forces you to that play to park the guy that has it on top of a building and just sort of deny cones of space, right? So basically, like,
not that there's anything wrong with it.
Right.
In fact, that can be done thematically in the sense that you are herding people into your traps,
kill box,
right?
yeah.
Your kill boxes or your traps to take slave.
Just for me, I always like, I feel like the mobility that any of the Eldar factions offer, but specifically Dark Eldar, if you're not using that, you're kind of hindering yourself in a little bit to not use that mobility. So I feel like by using this guy that's just going to park it on top of a high piece of cover and just wait, while that does offer some denial and stuff like that, by just kind of the threat of it alone, you're not really using that facet of them to as much of a degree. And the fact that it's one shot and you want to, if you want to move with it, you're going to take another minus. I don't know.
Now, question for you: Can you take on the Dark Eldar? No heavy specialist. Okay,
specialist.
so
you
yeah,
make him a sniper.
So we should probably lay that out real quick. A Cabalite warrior can be a scout, a comms, a veteran, a
medic.
No, there's no medic.
No.
There's one more that I'm leaving out.
Scout,
Zealot.
comms,
For
sniper,
some reason, Zealot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could make
veteran.
you could make a Sybarite.
Yeah. No, well,
as a zealot, and then that could, if they have the agonizer, that could do
yes
work.
and no, because if you're playing just Cabal and you are playing without elites, you only have the Sybarite and the Cabalites, and the only thing out of all of that can be a leader is the Sybarite, and you can only take one.
Right.
So you're kind of hamstringed into doing so. So the Zealot in that particular very niche situation,
maybe
not ideal.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah. So those are the heavy weapons to bring it around town. The special weapons, you have the blaster, which is already kind of touched on. It's just an assault. It's half range from a Darklands, but it's assault, so you're a little bit more mobile with it.
Assault 1.
Yeah, and then you have the Shredder, which is a really interesting gun.
Now the Shredder is the other one that I'm like, this is
a gun.
So Shredder is range 12. It's D6 shots, and it's all D6. It's not auto hitting though, which is a bit of a bummer, just the way that it's kind of designed. But still, D6 shots, strength 6, AP -1. You can re-roll failed wound rolls.
Yeah, that's
one,
real nice.
one damage.
One damage.
Yeah.
So again,
To clarify again, re-roll failed wound rolls against infantry models.
Right. Yeah.
But again,
kill team, it will apply to
most everything is infantry.
I think literally everything. Well,
drones, I guess.
Yeah, drones are probably not. Drones definitely aren't there. I'm sure as you hit some of the commanders, you probably hit something that's no longer infantry.
Yeah, but I mean the vast swath of available kill team models is
this
infantry.
This is a time where that gun can shine.
Yeah.
I like that weapon a lot, and it's a 1-point upgrade for a Cabalite gunner. So you go from 8 points to 9 points, dirt cheap by most standards for that kind of firepower.
The thing that makes me nervous about the Shredder, and I think I've taken it once before, is that it's so close range on such a fragile thing that if you are getting within range to get ready to shoot it, someone's probably going to be declaring a charge on you.
Yeah. Well, and then that's the problem, is that it's 12-inch range, and so it's half range to ignore the penalty is 6, and that is. So you better have the bottom of turn order so that you can move into the 6 and light them up because they've already failed their charges or what have you.
I feel like at least on average dice, it's not so bad to fire at long range because on average, you're getting 4 shots.
Yeah, it's assault 6.
2 will go through, and you're re-rolling failed wounds.
Right.
Yeah, you're probably gonna get.
Excuse me, assault D6.
Assault D6.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting weapon. I think
it's unique.
Yeah.
Based off what we were talking about before, in that it is that middle ground gun that Drukhari just don't have, right? Everything else
except they do have it.
In what
in
form?
The Shredder.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Except in this instance,
Okay, so just a couple other real quick things for Cabal weaponry. Yeah, you got your Sybarite or Sybarite. They can equip a power sword, or they can equip an agonizer. And they can also equip a Phantasm grenade launcher.
Yeah. The Phantasm grenade launcher, I'd like to take a special shout out.
Yeah.
Really cool weapon.
1-point upgrade.
Or a blast pistol. I'll throw that in there.
Yeah.
We know what blast stuff does.
1-point upgrade.
Gets you right to that meaty 100 if you can make it.
Yeah. And is it like going to kill a model? No.
Well.
But if you are willing to spend some command points on it,
2
command points, you get Torment Grenade.
Yeah, so this tactic, 2 command points, like you said. Use this tactic when you choose a model and your kill team to shoot with a Phantasm Grenade Launcher. If an enemy model is hit by any attacks made with that weapon in this phase, then in addition to the normal effects, roll 3d6. If the result is higher than the target's leadership characteristic, it suffers 1 mortal wound.
That is great.
I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one.
Okay.
Oh, you're wrong.
Well,
don't advocate for the devil. He's the devil.
Well, he's not a bad guy when you get to know him. So here's the thing, right? You've watched a couple of the other battle reports, hopefully, on the show at this point, and there are other stratagems, or I guess tactics in Kill Team, that can dish out mortal wounds for less CP. And in this situation, 2 CP for, and admittedly, the roll is pretty much a guaranteed thing. Off 3d6, if you're against the right opponent, it will be very hard to fail that roll unless the dice are just not with you at that time. So the mortal wound is pretty quote unquote guaranteed.
Yeah, we'll say it's reliable.
Reliable is the better way to put that. Yeah. Whereas like the Icon of Flame, 1-point upgrade as well, right?
Right.
It's
no CP investment.
No CP investment. It's only on a 6, but it fills that niche, right?
Yeah. Really quick, just for sake of argument, what's the range on a Phantasm Grenade launcher?
That's what I was going to say. So it's 18 inches.
18 inches.
And it's assault D3. So it's not a grenade, it's a grenade launcher. So you can fire it in addition to whatever other weapons you have on your Sybarite. So I mean, if you really pop off on a single turn and you could shoot something with whatever gun you have her equipped with, and then you can shoot the Phantasm Grenade at something else, you can use Torment Grenade and potentially knock 2 things out.
Yeah.
Also, that's interesting too. Yeah, because I'm now rereading it now that you brought that up. So it says if an enemy model is hit by any attacks made with that weapon this phase. So if you get super lucky,
just a hit.
If you get super lucky, you roll 3 on your Phantasm Grenade,
and you split your
spend
shots.
the 2 CP
up, right.
and you split those shots.
Mm-hmm.
You could get 3 mortal wounds. So
so
in that instance, that is a choice tactic.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is like I think that's the sign of a good tactic. I mean, obviously the sign of a great tactic is that it's just like this is a like you're going to use this every turn. It's just your bread and butter. You're going to do it. But the sign of a good, in my mind, a well-balanced, well-designed tactic is that it, in the right instance, with everything going your way, this thing game-changing. Yeah. And other than that, it's pretty
and remember for the Phantasm Grenade Launcher too, once you hit with it, that model gets a -1 leadership. So you're rolling 3d6 on their leadership -1, and the mortal wounds from the Torment Grenade strat happen in addition to the effects that already happen once you hit with the Phantasm Grenade, which is -1 leadership. Which, again, in 40k, not that exciting, and Kill Team, pretty big.
Yeah, force a nerve check, and now they have a -1. And you got yourself stew going.
To touch on the rest of the profile of that weapon, it's a strength 1. So, I mean, you need a 6 to be a successful wound. Not that you're fishing for that usually. This is to get that leadership debuff, or if you're using the stratagem, or tactic, to get the mortal wound, which mortal wounds are great.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I mean, again, we've talked about a dice game and averages and stuff like that, where it's like even if you're not using the stratagem and you're just rolling these in addition to everything else, eventually you are going to hit that time where you hit the 6 to wound and your opponent fails the save and you take them out of action. And when you take a model out of action by spooking it to death, you're going to feel great. It's going to be a great moment.
Yeah, it's a shame this didn't happen in October because,
Well,
let's also not forget too that just Drukhari in general, I think, have access to some of the best tactics in the game, especially for.
Wait, are we just saying that out loud? Because I mean, you're on your own in that category, my friend. I think Matt supports me in that.
You got to make a strong.
Yeah, you got. All right, court in his order. Pausing this video. We're not going to talk about the rest of Drukhari. We're just going to hammer this away until Tim is a broken man.
Let's diverge for a moment. Do Drukhari have the best tactics in the game?
So here's my argument, especially for Cabals. I would consider myself
every time
more of a kind of a reactionary player, meaning that I usually am not the one to come up with the game plan, but once I see it happening from the opponent, I can kind of finagle my way out of it. And I think they have some of the best tactics for that type of play. I guess I'll make with the caveat.
You're saying they have reactionary, like if this happens, activate tactic.
So already you got Fire and Fade, which is nice because as we know in 40k and Kill Team alone, a movement phase is where you have the most control over.
Yeah, it's the most important phase of the game.
So with Fire and Fade, you can move your model, you can shoot with them in the shooting phase, and you drop 1 command point, Fire and Fade, and you can move them 7 inches as if it were the movement phase. What's the movement characteristic on a Cabalite Warrior? 7 inches. So you move them out, you shoot with them, you move them back into cover before the opponent has a chance to react.
Cue Nick's tears.
Yeah, so none of you have seen this yet on the channel, but I started playing Tau, and we used to have this thing called Jump, Shoot, Jump. It was a great ability that I wish we still had. Man, those were the days.
You 100% know I will be putting.
I'm gonna stare
sad music.
I'm gonna stare very sadly off in the distance so Matt can just
So fire and fade is huge. Fire and Fade is huge. It can get you out of trouble very quickly, and it can really kind of help you when you are fragile.
1 CP.
Yeah. It's 1 CP.
It's not your turn. It is a portion of the turn. Yep. It is that ability that you can.
Another 1 CP stratagem.
So we're going through stratagems now? Is that
or tactic. Just on this one page right here. Cruel Deception. Use this tactic after a model from your kill team falls back. That model can still shoot this battle round. That's going to be big for your Shredder I think, and stuff like that. If they fall back, pseudo fly, kind of fall back, you can still shoot with that weapon. Again, another 1 CP thing. Very, very Eldar, right? Your opponent's not expecting it. It's very tricksy, kind of playing around in the movement phase. I think that's another big one, especially for 1 CP. A couple other stratagems that aren't in the core book, but are in the Slicing Noose Witch Cult sort of separate thing that they sold. Are the why am I blanking out? Lightning fast reactions. There we go. 1 CP.
I think those were reprinted here in the
Elites. They probably will be. But
I
1
think
CP,
they're reprinted here.
You're chosen as a target for an attack. You spend it reactionarily wise, and you get an additional -1 to hit. All reactionarily like.
So it's
tell me more.
And to be clear, this specifies in the shooting or the fight phase.
Right.
So you can get that -1 whenever you want for 1 CP.
Yep. So, and that is it's an addition to a long range penalty, to a
it's not
penalty.
saying you get obscurement. It's not saying it's a flat stack. So just to be clear, since we're gonna talk about them for a little bit, there is 1, 2, 3. There are 7 extra tactics that came out in the Slicing Noose Kill Team box.
Yeah.
Sounds like cheating.
Yep.
It definitely and I think the one thing that I will allow to your statement that was so heretical is that point for point, command point wise, their tactics are almost all 1 CP.
Well, and it doesn't fit that death by 1,000 cuts. Instead of having a 2 CP or maybe even 3 CP, like heavy-handed, powerful strat, it's all these short little 1 CP like utility things.
Funnily enough, one of the majority of their 2 CP ones really just aren't that good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean the other one I have here besides Torment Grenade, which is 2 CP, which you already kind of went on about, but the Pray They Don't Take You Alive. Use this tactical model from your kill team, takes an enemy leader out of action in the fight phase for the remainder. For the remainder of the battle, models in that enemy's leader's kill team must subtract 1 from their leadership characteristic.
Made a meal out of that one.
Yes. So basically, you kill the leader, and then everyone else in the enemy kill team gets -1.
Thematically, beautiful.
It's cool.
Oh yeah.
In play, I would like to see the moment where that happens, where it's impactful enough that it wasn't already the fact that you just killed their leader.
The fact that it's the fight phase too. I'm usually taking leaders out and shooting.
And then that's specifically for Cabal. Killing a leader in the fight phase is not really going to be their bag. That's not their.
Well, I mean, you can take this with. You can use this as a Drukhari tactic. No, but yeah, Cabal.
Based off what we were talking about.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we're still working through the factions. Yeah. So until you hit the elite portion where you can add in those mercenaries that are better at combat, it's very unlikely unless you're fighting, I don't know, a Grot, right?
Yeah.
So, but tactics-wise, I think they have a good spread. Are they the best? No, I don't think so. And let me just capitalize on one thing they don't have that I think is critical for a good spread of tactics. They don't have anything that prevents an out of action, and that's a huge tactic. That some of the, and it's not to say that the factions that have them are better. It's just that having that is such a nice little safety net
to be able to protect
that one thing that's critical.
Model.
You've had plenty of times where we've played where you saw that I was targeting your leader, and you're like, I'm gonna keep that 2 CP up.
Just gonna hold on to that 2 CP because you just shut it down.
So fair enough.
Let's really quick while we're on the Cabals. Let's talk about their obsessions brought in with the elite books.
Yeah.
We've got Blackheart.
So just a real quick caveat. The main thing with
we're going to move forward.
Yeah, we are going to move
in
forward
this video at some point, please.
Once we get through this. So the main thing with obsessions that is different from any other army in Kill Team is that you have to take all of that same sub-faction to get the obsession.
Yes.
Barring the Blades for Hire units that were introduced in Elites.
Right,
So,
which again, same thing like with Orcs where free Buddhas, like Flash Gits and Gretchen don't break your thing. Drukhari get Blades for Hire, so Incubi and Mandrakes don't benefit from, but nor do they hinder you from obtaining.
But other than that, you can't take witches in a detachment and still benefit from one of the Cabal obsessions or racks or Grotesques or anything like that. You can make a kill team list or kill team roster with all 3 subfactions by all means, but your list must have all of the same type of subfaction to benefit from the obsession.
And to touch on that note, while it might not feel great to have a lack of a chapter tactic or obsession in this case, you do still have power from pain.
Yes.
Which is essentially a new or an added chapter tactic each turn. So there could be a lot of credence to taking a list that is a hodgepodge of combat, shooting, etc. Because at that point, you are now playing with the full force of the Drukhari, where you have excellent shooters, excellent combat, excellent durability. You have a little bit of everything you want. Sure, you're not getting that obsession, but as we're going to go through these obsessions, you'll see they add some good power, but it's not backbreaking to not have it.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, is that the loss of any obsession is leveled out by the fact that, yes, you can take, like, here's the best fighters, here's the best shooters, here's the best, like, tanks. Like, you can take it all and make a really nicely balanced kill team if you mix and match.
Yeah. All right, so just real quick to run through the obsessions for the Cabals. You have Cabal the Blackheart. That's the one basically where they treat the turn that it's on for power from pain as one higher than it actually is.
Reroll charges right from the top, which is really nice.
It's good. It accelerates you for if you know that you're going to be in a very killy match, right? Or maybe the match is one of those, if you break, you lose.
If you break, and you want to
get to those higher things quickie. Quickie. Quicker.
Boner boys, you want to get to them quickie.
You want to get to them quick.
That's Dark Eldar, baby.
They really bring out the worst in you. So
it also says here models in your kill team that do not have power from pain get the Inertia Suffering, which is the first round bonus. But I don't think there's anything in kill team right now that doesn't have power from pain. They have power from pain.
They do?
They can't benefit from obsessions, but they have power. Them and Incubi have power from pain.
Hey, let us know. Actually, probably what it is future proofing. It's for some sort of, like,
in case I had the slith. Anyway, so the next one is my favorite. It's called Cabal the Flayed Skull, Inescapable Slayers. Models in the kill team don't suffer penalties for hit rolls for the target of their attacks being obscured because of intervening terrain. That is really cool.
That is an Auspex per model, which is usually a 1-point upgrade for every model in your army.
Yeah, that's big.
Free.
It's awesome.
Very good.
You know, we already talked about, you know, sort of the range advantage the Cabals have over the other types of subfactions. Being able to now ignore obscurement penalties is huge.
Right.
Well, obscurement is your big defense for the large part, right?
Yeah. So I'd actually like to say the counterpoint to that, the other one is I want to skip the next one and go straight to Obsidian Rose.
Yeah, that's
the other cool one. Yeah, you get extra range, or is it that you
ignore? So ignore the penalty for long range.
Yeah,
so
you ignore penalty
long range, or you're ignoring.
So either one is you basically ignore a penalty, and you just pick which you want to ignore.
I will say, and this is because for the purpose of the list that we generated across us, I had Cabal. And the rest had the other two.
The rest.
The rest.
The rest
have a name.
The help had the other two. It was really tough to choose between Flayed Skull and Obsidian Rose, purely for that idea that you are mitigating one of the critical minuses that you always have to deal with in Kill Team.
Yeah.
But I ended up defaulting to the point that no matter what, and we were talking about the tempo of Drukhari earlier, you are going to be moving in. That is your whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Obsidian Rose is great. It's a great ability. It's something that I'm sure other factions would love to have. But at the end of the day, ignoring obscurement is going to be the harder thing to do because you can ignore long range based off your movement. You have control over that. Obscurement is largely controlled by the opponent unless you have the additional movement to ignore, to find that zone.
Yeah.
But people are consciously placing their models in a way that they are always going to acquire some kind of obscurement. So you are negating a minus more regularly with Flayed Skull than you are with Obsidian Rose.
Yeah,
I'd say Obsidian Rose works in a weird way where you have kind of a backline of a Cabal fire base that's supported by a bunch of Incubi that are running forward.
Yeah, it works with Assault 1 weapons.
Well, and that way you can stay at the long range. You know,
right. That's Obsidian Rose is maybe the one you want if you are taking the Dark Lance.
I was about to say Dark Lance.
The Dark Lance that's going to sit and just ready every turn.
Because your rapid fire weapons don't benefit from this trait necessarily. Yeah. Although it is saying that at least that your one shot that you're getting for a Splinter Rifle is still going to be better. It's but
Dark Lance is also 36 inches. Half range is 18.
Right.
That's really
it's an irrelevant.
I think Flayed Skull is the best. But for your list, you actually went with Poison Tongue, didn't you?
I did. So
Poison Tongue. Yeah, let's just read the thing real quick. So you reroll wound rolls of 1 for melee weapons and poison weapons used by models in your kill team, and then it goes into what a poison weapon is. But basically, you're rerolling ones to wound
any splinter weaponry
in close combat, and basically any splinter weapon.
And this is where, so I picked it one to try to look at something different. I have a feeling the majority of people who, play a Cabal faction would probably lean towards Flayed Skull for the reasons we just discussed. But specifically, what I liked about this is that in the list that I put down below, it was built for a normal quote-unquote kill team without any elites added into it.
Right.
Well, all that leaves you with is a Cyberite and a bunch of Cabalites. Sabaros, the pizza company, and a bunch of Cabalites.
Sponsor Sabaros.
Yeah. Taste the pain. So it ends up, when I was filling out that list, I mean, you can only take one heavy weapon, you can take one special weapon, the rest is Splinter Rifles.
Yeah.
And there's not really an expensive model for them to take with just those two options.
Right.
So my list ended up being, I think, 10 Cabalites with Splinter Rifles, and then the 3 specialists, or no, it was 9, and then 3 specialists and a leader.
Yeah.
All of which had some sort of thing that it tied to it, and as you pointed out, just having the ability to hit in combat, so like a close combat weapon, is queuing off of that roll.
Right. Yeah.
So you will always be getting a reroll 1 to wound, and as we've seen in 40K and Kill Team, the wound roll is probably the harder thing to get buffs to.
Yeah, the wound roll is the more important roll, perhaps.
There's a lot of to hits modifiers, reroll ones, etc. like that. To have that in the wound phase is pretty critical, because if you can get more wounds through, it's harder for them to. It's more likely you're going to reduce them to 0 wounds, and then at that point you get to that ever important injury roll, which is what we're fishing for. So I went with this because it seemed the most efficient for a pure Cabal list in that fashion. That everything is benefiting from it, whereas Flayed Skull would be very much in that category too. Mm-hmm. I'm always going to be benefiting from that, as long as the opponent is putting things behind cover. Yeah. But it just, I don't know, it felt very thematic to that. It's a theme choice.
The more we talk about it, the more I liked Poison Tongue, because I really have now convinced myself that I think the way to play a good Cabal list is that, like, not really searching for that out of action, but kind of just getting a bunch of flesh wounds on things, and then sort of grinding them down over time.
Yeah.
And then, for your Cabals, you're usually not getting into combat with that subfaction until turn 3 anyway, when you're already hitting on 2s.
You get a +1.
And then to reroll 1s to wound when you're already hitting on 2s is going to be a lot better.
You might get a couple cheeky kills that way, which are pretty relevant with all the flesh wounds you've accumulated at that point, right? At that point, a 3 or a 4 is very easy out of action.
I like that a lot. So next one, going in order, is the Witch Cult.
Yes. Before we talk about Lich Cults? Ooh. Well, before we talk about the Witch Cults, let's take a little break. Yeah. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. We are full of beers now, ready to go, and we're talking witches.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, which is fitting, actually, that we have, the Witch Cults are like the source of entertainment in Kamara. They're also kind of like a weird source of sustenance for, like, the non-warriors, because the ones that are going on the real space raids, they're feeding off of the chaos and everything that they're causing in battle. But the general citizens in Kamara aren't really going out there and doing that. They get their fix. So
someone's got to deliver the mail.
Right. They get their fix, so to speak, from just the combat that the witches do in the arenas. So,
here's the thing. Here's what I like about the witches.
Yeah.
Number one, I myself, as you guys know, hopefully as you, the viewer, have caught on.
a shooty player.
I am,
all about the guns.
Yeah, 100% about the guns. No, I am a melee enthusiast through and through.
He says while playing Bad Moons.
No, but I started off with orcs. I mean, even Bad Moon. The reason I like Bad Moons is they're fluff, but even playing a heavily shooting Bad Moons army or kill team, still melee is an essential part of that. But so that's what I like about the witches, that they are like the melee faction. Yeah. And they are the epitome of that glass cannon-y, like, if they can get in, they're like a scalpel, right?
Yeah.
If they can get in and make an incision, they're going to slice and dice. But if you take like a scalpel and take a hammer to it, you're just going to break it.
It's not like a scalpel. They probably actually just do have scalpels on them.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Well,
It's not like.
they might just
they
do,
have Hecatari blades, and they probably are scalpels.
Yeah.
My thing with witches, they, I think, would probably be my least favorite of the sub factions.
Wrong.
I own the least amount of witch cult models, not because I don't like them. I think they're awesome.
I literally said that was because
one because the sculpts are beautiful. I just all of the lack of armor intimidates me. You have to paint a lot of skin tones.
Ooh, baby.
On witches, which is nerve wracking.
Also, witches are all female.
No, there are male witches.
No.
Yeah. No, I was.
But beyond that too, they're just. I think they're just very, very tricky to play. And
Yes.
in 40K, you can throw witches in a Raider or a Venom or something like that to kind of get them to where you want them to be. They don't have that delivery method in Kill Team. They have an 8-inch move, which is nice.
Yeah.
But they're the same stats as a Cabalite Warrior in terms of defenses. However, they have a 6+ armor save, and unlike in 40K, their dodge save does not work in shooting.
Yeah, it's only
so
in
they don't get a
combat.
6+ invulnerable save against shooting. They just get the 4+ invulnerable save in combat, which is nice. But the trick with them is getting them to where you need them to be, which is hand-to-hand combat.
Right. Well, and that's what I was saying. That's why I like them, because I am, generally speaking, pretty well versed in being able to land in combat. And
but here's my sticking point with them.
You're definitely used to 6+ armor saves.
So if we're going into the vacuum of I want to make a completely witch list, right?
Yeah.
Just witch units. The witch models, as far as I know, don't have any amount of shooting, right?
They have
Do they have pistols?
They have splinter
Which is
pistols, and
range
then the Hecatrix can
6?
take a blast pistol.
6 for the range?
12 for the
12.
splinter pistol, 6 for the blast pistol.
Yeah, 6 for where it matters, which is half range.
Yeah.
Right. So at that point, though, you are shirking a very large part of the damage of 40K or Kill Team, right? I mean, ideally with a small amount of models on the table, which is Kill Team, you want to be effective in as many of the phases as possible, right? That's like where, Thousand Suns make up for their low model count by having,
With
psychic phase,
yeah.
shooting phase, melee phase, or combat phase. They get all pieces of that pie.
Right.
But in this case, with an all-witch unit, you are, like you were saying, completely dependent on the fact that you can connect physically with them from one model to another across the board.
Right.
And against a savvy foe or someone who's even just, in the scouting phase, like, I'm going to plant some traps. I know it's an all melee unit. They're coming right towards me, right? Yeah. You build in that design.
Right.
It's much harder to play, like you were saying, but it is also negating a good portion of the damage available. So that's my sticking point with the witches.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny that the 3 that we picked, I picked Cabal, you picked Covens, you picked Witch. It fits perfectly into our stereotype of what we play the most. I play very shooty, you play very melee, and you play as defensively as possible.
Yeah, I just like to face tank things.
Yeah. Well, but see, here's the thing: is like that's where, and this is like you said earlier about every game of Kill Team is a discussion of what you're playing and everything like that. I mean, if you're bringing like an all witch list or a witch plus incubi, which by the way, that's my roster is witches and incubi, so it is just full on melee, gonna run at you. The end. You need to be playing missions that are going to bring it back around to you. Like, obviously, you're not going to bring an all-witch team or whatever to a game of take prisoners, unless your opponent's like, yeah, I'm down for it. But you're also not going to do like that into a mission that would like benefit you negatively or hinder you, like sweep and clear, perhaps.
Well, this is where the roster comes in play, right?
Right.
As we've talked about multiple times, although we, spoiler from behind the curtains, we don't tend to build rosters when we perform our videos. We build a list, we discuss it with each other, saying, how do you feel about this list? And go from there. And I feel like that's probably how most of Kill Team is done, unless you get to a tournament setting where that roster is designed to give you as much flexibility as possible. You're right. It's definitely mission dependent.
Yeah. And I mean, they're going to be very fickle. They're going to be hard to pilot well. And but I mean, that's what like attracts me to it, is that it's like, okay, here's this. It's like a puzzle to crack, like how to get the most out of them. So in that, it's how do we crack the puzzle of like using witches effectively? Right. You start at combat drugs.
Oh yeah.
So combat drugs, you roll a d6. Is it at the beginning of the mission? At the beginning of a game?
Yeah, the beginning of the game, pretty much. You
before
roll.
the battle.
And this is another thing that's kind of my bugaboo about witches and Kill Team. In 40K, you say, okay, this group of witches is going to have +1 toughness. This group of bikes over here is going to have +1 attack. This group of Hellions over here is going to have +1 strength, whatever.
So you hear how that sounds already broken as it is, right? So they balanced it in Kill Team.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So you don't. I would say for me the big fix here would be just that you get to pick.
Yeah.
You get to pick. If you could pick and then it's the one combat drug across your whole team, that'd be one thing, but you have to roll.
You have to roll for it.
Yeah.
Now, I will say
disagree.
that the options for the drugs, though they haven't changed from 40K, are better in Kill Team as it stands than they are in 40K. Like the standouts obviously are the +1 strength, the +1 toughness, the +1 attack
That's what they
ones.
want.
Yeah. I would actually
is there a
say
movement
another.
one, too?
There's
Yeah.
Hypex
plus two
+2
movement.
to move. That
Yeah.
to me is a big standout
Yeah.
because now you have a 10-inch move base
Yeah.
model. That's huge.
That's huge.
But
That's
even
huge.
even
for an 8-point model, very good.
Even Splinter Mine, which is the one that adds to the leadership, and normally in 40K that's kind of like, okay, whatever. I had one extra to pick. I think in Kill Team is huge because that makes your Hecatrix leadership 10 if you roll for Splinter Mine,
that's
which
pretty big.
is massive.
So
yeah.
And then the other one is Serpentin, which is the one that adds +1 weapon skill. So
That's
one
not
is
bad
it's
either.
not bad.
Yeah.
It's really
moot after turn 3.
right. You want to make sure
Yeah.
you make an impact to the first 2 turns. If
Right.
you got
Right. Well, and
Serpentin,
that's the big drawback of having to roll is that honestly, if you roll Serpentin, then you're
Serpentin.
Serpentin. Man, this is going to
You
be
can
a
get
mess of
Serpentin at your
mispronunciation.
local stores.
Let us know how to pronounce these things.
it's like it's Serpentine.
Yeah. yeah. Serpentina.
Serpentine.
Yeah. If you didn't
There's a
know,
little accent over the I.
yeah, Antonio Banderas personally voices all of the Drukhari. So
Oh man, if we
Yeah.
could have a guitar.
Yeah. can you cue in some castanets when we say
I'll
Serpentine?
see what I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah, go ahead.
here's my sticking point and why I think it's balance that is a roll instead of a choose.
Mm-hmm.
Are there what witch cult members do not get power from pain?
Oh, I mean, yeah, no,
They all get
They
it.
all get it,
They all
right?
get it, yeah.
So like we were saying already, they get their obsession, assuming you did all witch cults. They get power from pain. That's already multiple on top of what everybody else is getting. And then combat drugs is just that
It's like
extra
even more. Yeah.
multiplier on top of that.
Absolutely.
If you could choose that every time, I mean, come on, man. I understand that they're largely melee based, but at that point, that might be a bit of a tipping scale for
That's
power
fair.
level.
That's
for
absolutely
8 points.
a fair,
For 8 points.
That's absolutely
Yeah,
a fair
so-
point. But I'm speaking from the land of I just want witches to be awesome.
Yeah.
And I want to pick my combat
Well,
drug.
and
Play Hormagaunts.
As we'll see in the obsessions too, I think all 3 witch cult obsessions more or less give you the benefit of a combat drug.
Yeah.
So
So
if you-
actually, let's just go
Yeah.
ahead and transition. Let's use that as a segue straight into it. So we've got the Cult of Strife. Yep. And then go ahead. I mean, it's more
so Cult of
appropriate.
Strife, Spectacle of Murder, that's the one that basically gives you an extra attack in the first round of combat. So if you charge,
super
we're
good.
charged.
Don't
or-
mind that.
or
That is
I love
useful at all times.
Yeah. Because what's the base number of attacks for a witch?
2. Hecatrix Blade gives you an extra 1.
Every one of their melee options gives you an extra attack.
Yeah.
So
base
it's a
3.
fancy way.
basically.
They all have 3 attacks, no matter what
So
weapon.
4
then
attacks on
4.
first
4
combat.
attacks.
And
yeah.
God forbid you roll
Pretty
an
good.
extra attack combat drug, you got 5
Woo!
base attacks.
Woo!
On a
Hot in
witch.
here.
Yeah. That's. I mean, now we're this is like getting me like.
Okay, witches are good, guys. As Jay.
Witches are point for point.
So that one I think is probably your best all rounder. There's nothing that's going to be wrong with having an extra
You're
attack.
always
Yeah,
on all
gonna
your
use
I
witches.
think that's the one where if you're going to like a tournament and you have to build a roster, that's the one you pick because it's never not going to be effective.
Yeah.
That is always going to be effective. You're always going to be glad to have an extra attack.
Yeah. But I would also argue, I think my favorite is this next one here, Cult of the Cursed Blade. So
Yes.
only the strong survive. Increase the strength characteristic of models from your kill team by 1. In addition, when you take a nerve test for a model on your kill team, subtract 1 from the result.
Preach.
So that is basically giving you the +1 strength drug and more or less the leadership.
Yep.
You're
Plus
getting
2
a half
leadership.
bit of
Half of the leadership
Yeah.
drug.
Yeah.
Well, you're getting the full strength one, and then half the leadership one.
Yeah, I
effectively.
like that one. That one's the now I left in the roster below that I made for witches, which is a witch and incubi mix. I left
Which
no roster witch and incubi.
Which
mix.
one? Which
Oh my God!
Which one?
I don't know what you're saying.
Okay.
What did you pick for that?
I left it blank because realistically it can be any of them.
Yeah.
But for me, if I'm just playing, generally speaking, I go Cursed Blade as well, because I think it gives witches, with the having to roll for your combat drug, it gives witches a much needed boost in consistency of wounding. It just which again we talked about, wounding is the big important role. It's hard to modify.
It's the hurdle you have to get past.
Right, and again the game is structured around tough 4, witches are strength 3, you make them Cursed Blade, boom, strength 4. Then if you roll the +1 strength drug, now you're strength 5. Now you're now you're rolling.
Yeah.
Dice for wounds.
Thank you.
Better. Yeah. That's probably my favorite. The last one here, Cult of Red Grief, is kind of a stinker for me, especially because
unanimously we all
especially because
way,
in 40k it's so good because you can advance and charge with this one, but this one here just says you can reroll charge rolls for models.
But again, that's that thing where we talked about. It's that's like Serpentine for combat drugs, where it's that's just the turn 2 power from pain benefit. So you better be using that
a
turn
1 charge,
and
or else it's useless.
It's possible. You could make a veteran out of something, right?
Yeah.
Take the 2 CP, move it up the board, get within range of that turn 1 charge, and there could be plenty of times where that is a critical moment where you are actually they've left this model way out in the open.
Yep.
Get in on that.
And
right?
and you get in
and it's
and
done.
you mess them up.
Their leaders out there, you go take it out. Good. 90% of the time, you're going to wish you had one of these other 2.
Yes, I agree. And that's why, personally for me, top spot goes to Cursed Blade, honorable mention, and like we said, the more sort of broad, you're never going to be sad to not to have an extra attack.
Cult of Strife,
Think about it this way, right? The majority of troops choices you are seeing, and I guess not troops choice, but the base infantry model that every kill team has is going to be usually 1 base attack, and then the sergeant will have 2.
Yeah.
A witch having 3 base attacks, 2 base attacks with an extra from the weapon, that's already a lot. That's an orc boy at that point, right? So when you tack on that 4th extra attack from that other, I'm sorry, what was that called? It's Cult of Strife. It's great, but it's not improving your ability to wound, right?
Yeah.
So if you can have the 3 attacks, which is already a good portion of that, that's 3 dice to roll. Now you're also having the opportunity to wound better. It's really going to make those count more.
Yeah. So before we go on and talk about specialist weapons, one thing we did not touch up on witches
No Escape.
No Escape.
Yes.
And No Escape is big. Now, so we already talked about how kind of challenging it is to get witches into combat, but once they get into combat, they're stick.
There. Yeah.
They have dodge that gives them a 4+ invulnerable save in combat, which is awesome. And then on top of all that, they have No Escape. Do you want to read that one out?
Yeah, so No Escape, if an infantry model, which again, maybe there's a couple non-infantry models
Don't
across,
charge a drone.
But most are infantry. Model within an inch of an enemy model with this ability would fall back. The controlling players roll off. The model that would fall back can only do so if the player controlling it wins the roll-off. So you have to literally have a dice off to be able to even fall back.
Yeah.
And you're stuck in there with a model, which when we get to the weapons, they're pretty spicy.
Yeah.
You don't really want to be in combat with a witch.
No.
Because it's going to tear you up. And then if you want to fall back, you're not even guaranteed it. Everybody else, you're guaranteed a fallback. But here, who knows?
Yeah. And this is part of that merit of, again, harping back to it, you may not need the obsession. Just taking a couple witches with a Shard Net and Impaler to tie up some key models while the rest of your guys pepper away at some of the lighter infantry to try to force those morale checks early. You're asserting control over the board in that regard, and that's what this does best.
I think the obsessions are basically, how do you want to shore up your weakness? Do you want to do it by taking an all-exclusive this sub-faction type army and then take an obsession, or do you want to mix and match? You're not going to get an obsession, but at least you're going to,
And two, that ties into what kind of game you want to play, right? Are you playing competitive, or are you playing casual, or are you playing narrative?
Right.
If you're playing narrative, maybe a holistic cabal is right up your alley. That's the real space raiders or the pirates. You want that.
Or like the if you're playing like a real narrative game again,
you have a little bit of everything.
Are you playing that what is it, the
Alliance of Agony?
Alliance of Agony. There you go.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
So the witch special weapons, that's part of the reason why you're taking them, right?
Let's start with the Hecatari blade.
Yeah, sure.
Right,
So
that's the base one.
It's strength user, AP 0, damage 1. Each time the bearer fights, you can make one additional attack with this weapon. So
it's a combat knife.
Any witch, regardless, is going to have 3 base attacks when you fight.
Right,
with
and that's 0 points, no extra points.
Free.
And again, for context, a witch is strength 3 unless you are cursed blade, where you're strength 4, or if you roll the combat drug for extra attacks.
If you augment with another weapon, right?
Which actually, I'd like to just take a quick divulgence right now.
There we go.
I need to double check, but we all kind of like play down strength 3, but
it's good. In
actually,
tough. It's average. Yeah.
Tough 3. I think is more common than tough 4.
Absolutely.
I think. Yeah. I could be wrong, and I'd have to double check. But I think. I mean, because the thing is, right? You have Space Marines, which are tough 4. And then you have things that are Space Marine likes, like the Heretic Astartes. You have Orcs, which are tough 4. But I actually think
half of Tyranids.
Yeah, but that's the thing is I think actually toughness 3 is the more common toughness.
And then once you slam into those toughness 5 things, it doesn't feel as bad.
It does. Yeah, exactly.
So it depends completely on the meta, and it depends on the environment that you're
Yeah,
playing
I'm just
in,
talking about just sort of a very dry, like looking through every single. Every single model. I would argue toughness 3 is the more common. I could be wrong on that.
Feels really good against Grots.
Yeah, I'm. Again, I feel like we've said a lot of absolute statements in this video, which is going to come back to bite us in the end. But
I might add some
assert,
text.
I would assert just like how 40k is. It feels like the average toughness, the Marine equivalent, the MEQ is the 4.
Is what it's based off of.
And that is the queuing factor for evenness, and that is
and that's what I was going to say. Is I think toughness 3 is the more common, but like I said before, the game is balanced around toughness 4. Yeah. So it's like there's a subtle design philosophy there where it's like more common that things are toughness 3, but the game is revolving around tough 4 because of Space Marines being the Mary Sue of the I mean anyway, back to witches.
So
the Space Marine Sue.
Yes. Yeah. So your witches I believe you have to make them a witch fighter before you can take the specialist weapon.
Yes, and just for clarification, witch fighters, you can take 3. You can up to 3 fighters in a kill team.
Makes sense.
Again, with the roster system, you're not limited to 3 witch fighters in a roster. You're just limited to 3 witch fighters in a kill team.
And if you are perusing the rosters or the list below, you'll notice the difference between the list and the rosters, especially for some of my rosters. I will have redundancy. I'll have the exact same unit with different specialists. So that way, in case of a weird scenario where I'm like, well, this sniper is going to be no good here, but he might be better as a comms specialist or something to that effect.
Exactly.
So you might put the exact same model, and you don't have to make another model. You just flavor that model as this is your combat or this is your zealot, right? In different situations could be better, Against a bunch of T3 models, that combat specialist looks real good.
Yeah.
Against a bunch of T4 models or T5,
the zealot
looks fantastic. So
I would argue I think witches, maybe benefit the least from being specialists of all the Dark Eldar, variants. I think you would probably, if you're going to take like a mix of all 3 detachments, you just have your witches be your non-specialist type characters.
So, and
again, I think
fair.
it's also maybe dependent on what combat drug you roll or what.
Well, and to be fair, we kind of poo on the scout specialism a lot, and that is unfortunately an option
I actually
for
need
every
to
single
double check. But actually, I think they FAQ'd the scout. So
Really?
Everybody has the
reroll charges.
Everyone has the level 1 tactic, and then the level 1 ability of each specialism. Yeah. I could be wrong, but they might. I'm pretty sure they FAQ'd the level because at level 1 with scout, the tactic and the specialism just bonus are redundant. They're literally the exact same thing. And so I think FAQ'd one to change its wording to actually be something different, which could give some credence to having something be a scout. Sure. Scouts are really interesting, though, in campaign play with level 2 and 3 and 4. Right. That's where they you're like, oh, man, they get stuff.
Because at the moment, the benefit of the scout that they get intrinsically is that they reroll advanced rolls. Then for a single CP stratagem, you can add 2 to the movement characteristic for that round, right? Yeah. So that could apply to charges, movement, advances, etc. Right? But it's unfortunate going back to the rest of the stuff, I mean, they have the two big ones for combat. They have combat and they have
combat
Zealot.
and Zealot, which are
those are huge.
Great.
You want those for your big combat guys.
And veteran to a degree, just to get a
I think a lot can be said for something like especially if you're taking an Alliance of Agony, if you take a Hecatari veteran, and move them up the board turn 1, and they get the extra movement. They get because the movement with the veteran tactic is the move of your unit, and you can choose to advance. So if you have a Hecatari and you've somehow rolled Hecatrix, excuse me, the Hecatrix, and you've rolled the Adrenalite
combat drive,
or sorry, not Adrenalite, the Hypex. So then you've got a 10-inch plus a D6 before the game begins, and then in the movement phase you get your move again. Like
that's big.
Huge.
Absolutely.
The only thing about the Hecatrix, they can't take any of these specialist weapons. They can't take an Agonizer, which I don't think we talked about before, but it's basically a poison melee weapon with an AP -2 and one damage. It's not bad.
An Agonizer is respectable. It's a respectable melee weapon.
But the specialist weapons that the Witch Fighters can take, you have. I'll just go in order of kind of my personal preference. You have the Razor Flails. So each time the bear fights, you can make one additional attack with this weapon, which is
they all have that.
It's kind of sad because in 40k you can make D3 additional attacks with the Razor Flails. But anyway, you can reroll failed hit rolls for this weapon. It's strength user AP -1 and 1 damage.
Respectable.
I think you're already hitting on 2s by about around 3. It's not as cool.
Yeah.
Next we have the Shardnet and Impaler. So each time the bearer fights, it can make one additional attack with this weapon. That's all of them. Strength user AP -1, 2 damage.
2 damage. Yeah. Special shout out to this one because it has the 2 damage, which is big for injury rolls.
The reason why this is sad is because in Kill Team, when you have the Shardnet,
it doesn't do anything extra for you.
Yeah, it makes the opponent roll a D3 when they're trying to fall back for the no escape rule, except for in full 40k. It's not in Kill Team. That is sad.
Yeah, I wish it had that in Kill Team as well. It could be then it could be like one of those things where only one model could take a Shardnet and Impaler. But there you have it. But it is your only access to damage 2.
Damage 2 is big. It is probably of note, too, for the actual box when you're building witches. You only get one of each weapon, right? Of these special weapons, or do you get multiple?
You get one of each.
So that may come into play when you're building. You may either want to magnetize or something along those lines.
Right.
Yeah.
And then last but not least,
this is my favorite.
Yeah, the Hydra Gauntlets. So strength user AP -1, 1 damage. You can make an additional attack, whatever. Reroll failed wound rolls.
Yes. So this is my favorite for 2 reasons. Number 1, mechanically. Again, reroll wounds. Let's say you have like nothing good for witches. Let's say you, for some reason, you pick Red Grief instead of Curse Blade.
For some reason, you're a big old dummy.
Yeah,
and you pick
for punishment, and you just want the challenge.
Sure, yeah. Or you're doing an Alliance of Agony thing, and so you don't have any of this. Okay, so you're strength 3. Yeah. And then you fail to get the +1 strength, the Grave Lotus. You fail to get Grave Lotus for your combat drug, so you're just stuck at strength 3. You get to reroll wounds. Yeah. And suddenly you become much more reliable to wound. So again, much like I said with Cult of Strife, it adds reliability to witches. Which is nice. The Hydra Gauntlets add reliability to your wounding. The second reason I love them is that way back in the day, Devil May Cry, there was a set of weapons that was like these double gauntlets, and that's all I can think about when I think of the Hydra Gauntlets is just this like zhitoon.
For the non-heretics out there, these are lightning claws. Yeah.
Yeah,
but they're gauntlets.
They're basically what Shredder has from Teenage Mutant, like the model itself. It's like what Shredder has from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it's got more spikes on it, basically.
Yes,
but it is still damage 1, correct?
Still damage 1. Still damage AP -1. So you're getting an additional attack with it, but you're rerolling failed wounds.
This is good for that second Witch Fighter, right? This is after you take the Shardnet and Impaler. This is going to be your secondary weapon choice, I would think. And then on top of that, by turn 3, when you're probably connecting those charges, you're already hitting on 2s. Now you get to reroll wounds. Yeah. Again, that reliability is tremendous. Yeah. It's going to connect.
And this is the one I would, in my perfect thing, and now in my roster, I have both permutations. But in a list, I would give the edge to the Hydra Gauntlets for a Zealot specialist.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then combat goes to the Shardnet and Impaler.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the Shardnet always has an extra attack. And then the Hydra Gauntlets, now you're going to be wounding most of the game on 4s or better. And re-rolling that instead of 5s re-rolling.
I will say, just like your model with the Dark Light weapon in the Cabal list, your Hydra Gauntlet Witch is going to be singled out. So you got to hide that thing.
Why do you say
well,
that,
actually,
Tim?
actually, I would say
from a long ago non-recorded video where Deathwatch just pasted.
Probably
that,
no. There's a recorded video too. I think it's the first video we recorded on the channel with the Drukhari where the Hydra Gauntlet Witch got pasted.
Perhaps. Well, and that's what I was going to say is again not that anyone should be hiding anything or playing like weird mind games when you're playing 40K because there is like a social contract to playing this game.
Kill Team.
Yeah, sorry. Well, 40K or Kill Team, all of it. But I mean, I think an opponent who is not like if they hear the Hydra Gauntlets and you're like, that's my Zealot Specialist, Hydra Gauntlets gets reroll wounds, like da la la la, you know, and then they don't like give it any credence and they let that in.
Yeah.
Phew, man, you're gonna be doing some work then.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean
sure.
it.
I think it works
depending
better.
on the efficiency of it. I still think that having a damage 2 weapon is going to it's going to better remove a model.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
I'm saying
that-
there should be. You can have 3 witch fighters, so
absolutely.
you should absolutely always have at least 1 shard net and impaler and at least 1 Hydra Gauntlet.
And you're limited to 1 shard net impaler, right? It says you can only take 1.
No, you can. So you can take up to 3 fighters, and then those fighters can be
They can
armed
all take the
with
same
whatever you want. Yeah, you could have 3 shard net and impalers if you really wanted to.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, at that point, you know, again, I harped on it a little bit beforehand, but for flat 2 damage, I think this is probably one of your better options.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So
I mean, if I was, let's say I was going to make my perfect list, I would put a Zealot Hydra Gauntlet, a combat Shardnet and Impaler, and then just a regular Shardnet and Impaler like in there.
And Razor Flails just
yeah. Because reroll hits, you're already hitting on 3s normally.
Or 2s on
and
after
2s, once
after
power
turn
if it had the
three.
D3 extra attacks like it does in 40K, I think it'd be a little bit more appealing. But just because it gets 1 extra, it's whatever.
Right. And then just you flood the board with your just normal Hecatari Blade Witches or your Incubi, as for my roster, and then that just all runs up, and then those specialists are gonna get missed by eventually. They're either they're not going to take out the specialist, and then 2 Hecatari Blade Witches are getting in, or they're like, I gotta like thin the herd, and they kill a Hecatari Blade Witch or 2, and then your specialists get in. And either way, you're happy.
Yeah. Of note, from the Slicing Noose box, there are a couple interesting
specific
which tactics that I actually have right here.
I got it as well.
Yeah, so
hit me with them.
Yeah,
there's Bloodied Grace.
Bloodied Grace, yeah. Go
Bloodied
ahead,
Grace,
talk about
one CP. Well, it decides to zoom back out. Use this tactic when a witch from your kill team would, and it says witch in the all capital version.
Yeah.
So anything that has the witch
keyword
cult
witch,
keyword, which they correct in the later Elites expansion. From your kill team would consolidate as part of fighting in the fight phase. You may move them up to 6 inches instead of up to 3.
Oh yeah, huge.
Very big. Especially because more often than not, people are going to be keeping their other friendly models nearby.
Yep.
To consolidate shooting, to consolidate melee presence, to there's so many times where if you tag one model and you can consolidate into the other, those couple extra inches are going to really make a difference between that model staying on the table or that model continuing their train of pain.
Yeah, and I'd like to say, actually, interestingly, in Kill Team, sometimes it does not behoove you to consolidate into another model because then they can fall back and then you're just left either stationary or falling back yourself. But because witches have the no escape rule, you are incentivized to consolidate into as many enemy models as you can, and because with the 4-up invuln, you're really likely to survive, and then they may not even be able to fall back, and then you'll be able to continue the carnage.
Put it this way too. So we haven't seen Tau on the channel yet. I fully intend to get them readied up for that. They are one of the few factions I think that has easy access to fly across drones, stealth suits. Which
you
is
better do that soon because I got a Tau Kill Team brewing right now.
Well, you don't have all those models, so that strength, the ability to fall back and shoot intrinsically just by having fly, is huge. The ability to negate that through keeping them in combat, is obviously something a Tau model never wants to be a part of.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, remember, it does say infantry, too, so it wouldn't work on your drones. It might work on the
will work on the
suits.
stealth suits. Stealth suits
It'll
are
work on
infantry.
stealth suits. It'll
Yeah,
work on
so-
Pathfinders. It'll work on
Yeah,
Fire Warriors.
stealth suits in particular
Breachers.
being probably one of the stronger models in Kill
That can
Team.
fly. Mhm.
It has fly. It has an intrinsic -1. This isn't the Tau video, but these are a great counter to that.
Yeah.
This is a strong strength that this faction has that very few other factions. Actually, I can't. Is there anything else in Kill Team that can prevent a fallback?
I don't think so.
I off the top of my head, I mean, if you know of one,
Let us
please
know,
let us
yeah.
know.
White
'cause
Scars just got one in 40K with that Master
really?
of Snares thing.
That's pretty cool.
But anyway.
Gross.
Okay.
So the other two things that they introduced in Slicing News, Murderous Rivalry. Now, this isn't specific to witches, but you can use it at the start of the Hammer of Wrath section of the fight phase, which I believe is just at the beginning of the fight phase. After you finish the charge.
That's models who have charged get
Yeah.
to fight first.
So the first time it is your turn to choose a model that charge to fight with, you may instead choose two models from your kill team that are ended their charge move within.
And how
4
many
inches of
CP
each
is
other.
that?
2.
That's 2.
It's
2.
your turn.
Oh man, that's really good.
And
That's
you pair
really
that up
strong.
with the leader one that lets another guy fight, or the the combat one that lets the guy
specialist.
fight. You can get
Yeah.
a lot of attacking models off.
Yeah,
at the
before
same
your
time,
opponent
before
can
your
do
react.
anything.
So that's a cool one. And then another one is Hyperstim, and that is the one that basically until the end of the battle round, you can double the bonus that you receive from your combat drugs.
Yeah.
Then at the end of the battle round, you have to roll a d6. On a roll of a 1, you suffer a mortal wound, which you can actually negate with a Nerd to Suffering if you roll a 6.
Funnily enough, yeah. If you roll a
funnily
1 to a
enough.
6,
Yeah.
you can praise
totally
the,
fine.
Yeah.
Praise the
praise whatever gods they don't want to birth into this world.
But yeah, doubling your combat drugs, especially one of the spicy ones like strength or attacks or even toughness to make your witches all of a sudden toughness 5 is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, huge. There's a lot to love about witches and the tricks you can pull.
Definitely
and
the
again,
trixiest, I would say.
Yeah, it is one of those things where if you are just starting out playing Kill Team as a whole or 40K as a whole, witches, you are looking at a very steep learning curve.
Yeah,
they have what you would call a high skill floor.
Yeah.
Meaning to just compete with them, you have to be already like proficient with a lot of things.
I
but
think
they also have a high skill ceiling where once you know what you're doing with them, you can do a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's true for a lot of melee focused armies in Kill Team or in 40K in general. Shooting will always, not always, will for the large part of the history of this game be king.
Yes.
It is easier to say, I shoot with this model, connect into that model.
Yeah, and it should be because it's battles in the 41st millennium. There's no reason why you would come across the field with a sword when you could just shoot them. Those are the
words of a heretic, because clearly you need to do it for honor, for the glory of the emperor and all that. Yeah. So, but that's neither here nor there. That's just a wrong opinion on one side of the table.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. I think we've talked enough about witch cults.
Have we?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Let me close the book. In conclusion, the reason I probably don't like him is because I'm a bad player.
And potentially not a great painter.
Yeah.
Right here.
That for sure.
That I'm
for sure.
kidding
No,
about.
that's fine.
That I'm kidding.
Anyway, moving swiftly along, speaking about painting skin, Racks.
And
And the Covens. Specifically.
And this will move us into the elite section of the
we'll fully be in elites.
Yeah.
Before we get into it, let's take a little break. We'll be right back.
And we're back.
We are back.
Back with Racks. So
Back with Racks.
I love that song.
It's a
Specifically the Back with Racks.
top hit in camera.
Racks on racks on racks. So the Homunculus Covens are my favorite of the three. They're like creepy, like Frankenstein-y type dudes. They're like the sculptors and the rebuilders. They're
of flesh, sculptors of flesh.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And they're sort of the artists.
You okay there?
Mic check 1 2.
No, it's not. They're sort of the ones that will rebuild you if you've been harmed and
they're
harmed
the
in battle.
dogs.
Exactly. And the Racks are the sort of lackeys that serve the homunculi in
orderlies.
In an effort to not only assist them but one day maybe be a homunculus themselves. So the Racks, as they're printed in the Elite supplement, which is when they first came out, are the wrong stat line. They are the exact same stat line as a Mandrake in that they have like an 8-inch move and they're strength 4 and they have like one more attack than they're supposed to. There was an FAQ in Errata that came out in August of this year that cleared that up. So they're back to their 40k stat line, which is a 7-inch move, toughness 4 being the main distinguishing factor.
So they're super tough for Eldar.
Yeah. And then
they're thick elves.
2 attack space. Yeah, they're thick. THICC thick elves.
And that's
cute picture of thick elves.
Gilliman approves.
Yeah. So if you want a thick goth
thick goth girlfriend elf.
Except that it's a
Rex.
dude.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
no, not always, my man. Remember, Drukhari are equal opportunity.
Yeah.
So
now they are all modeled with. It's weird. They're not wearing shirts, and there's no distinguishing female characteristics. But it's weird. Well, don't worry.
Are we
about
really
it.
delving into this?
Don't worry about it.
Is this where this conversation's going?
So,
okay.
The reason why I like the Covens, one, I love Rax. They're probably my favorite model. You also get access to Grotesques. And Grotesques are...
We should probably just take a
minute
minute
real saw
quick.
in a certain battle report.
Yes.
Grotesques are just what they're named.
Yeah.
Grotesque.
They're dirty in 40K. They're dirty in Kill Team. They're expensive. It's probably
They're 38 points.
Is there any other model for Drukhari that is in the 30-point range?
No.
Just Rax, right? Or Grotesque?
Grotesque, yeah.
But you bring one, and it's going to do 38 points of work.
It is durable beyond all else.
Yeah.
4 wounds?
4 wounds.
Yeah.
So the distinguishing factor for everything that's Homunculus Covens, the toughness is going to be one more higher than you would expect.
Thick elves.
So tough 4 on the Rax.
Thick.
The reason why I like the Rax too is on paper their strength.
Elves. All right.
I'm really excited about this. You guys are ruining it. On paper they're strength 3. But they have the Homunculus tools, which are poison weapons. So they're always wounding on 4s. So if you remember, they are equipped with the Homunculus tools. They can wound things on 4s unless they just choose to not use their melee weapon. They can just hit you with their fists. So they can still wound Grots on 3s, which is nice.
Okay. Okay.
But if you're fighting things toughness 4 and higher, you're still wounding on 4s with your Homunculus tools. It's 4+ to wound at all times, and it's AP 0 and it's damage 1. Arak has 2 attacks base. The Acothyst, which is the leader, is leadership 8, is up from 7, and then they have 3 attacks base. All 1 wound models, but the toughness 4 makes a big difference. They all have the rule insensible to pain, which gives them a 5+ invulnerable save.
Yep.
Which is nice. Instantly better than the mere 5+ armor save of the Cabals, and that any AP is not really going to affect them. And then they have power from pain, which I would argue probably benefits them the most. It adds to their durability right out of the gate.
Yep. It focuses on combat.
It lets them charge and stuff, which they're good at.
Yep.
But
and to say too, the Covens, they're a little slower.
No,
they're still movement 7. I mean, they're 1 inch slower than a witch, but they're still fast by any other.
A little slower than a witch.
Yeah, they're still.
It should be movement.
They're still elf movement standards, which is
thick elves.
Yeah,
thick.
So
elves.
All right.
Thick elves.
The cool thing about Rax too, they are good in combat. However, they can take some pretty cool guns if you take some Rat Gunners.
Yes.
They are the most expensive sort of base option. They're 9 points apiece. If you take
Which proves their superiority.
Yeah. If you take a Rat Gunner, you can give them either a liquefier gun or an ossifactor, and then the Acothyst, the sergeant, can take a Hexrifle, liquefier gun, or a Stinger pistol. So real quick, the liquefier gun. If you
this
saw
thing
it,
is scary.
If you saw it on the battle report with them,
it's a hand flamer, right?
Sort of. It's range 8. It's auto hitting, so it's a flamer. It's strength 3, which is kind of whatever. We just had a big long discussion about how strength 3 might not be so
beware.
bad. And then it has a variable AP that you roll at the beginning.
This is the spice.
So it's a minus D3 AP that you roll before you shoot it.
So it's guaranteed -1.
And then it's assault D6.
Could be up to -3.
Yeah. So it has a lot of sort of moving parts that can make it really scary or kind of meh if you roll -1 AP in 1 shot, but it could also be 6 shots at -3 AP, and then all of a sudden you're worried.
And that's the thing, again, it's like what the metrics that we judge a weapon by or a unit by in 40K
is different.
Is different than what you judge that unit or weapon or whatever by in Kill Team, because in Kill Team, most models are 1 wound.
Yeah.
Most models. Now, some models, of course, are 2 or more, but most models are 1 wound. So you only need to cause 1 wound to get to the injury roll for most models.
Yeah.
And so a strength 3 gun might not be that impressive initially until you realize that it's like, well, I just rolled a 3 for the D3 on the AP.
Yeah.
So even if you've got a 3-up save, you're rolling 6s to save. And I only need to chunk 1 off of you. So if I get 1 5-up to wound and you fail your 6-up save, word to injury roll, you know.
And it's auto hitting too, which, as we've talked about in the orc one, anytime you can take a roll flat out of the game is really nice.
Yeah. Well, and again, also auto hitting flamers, great for if you're trying to discourage charging.
And to my knowledge, comment if I'm wrong, this is the only flamer that Drukhari have access to, so increases the value of it a little bit more.
Yeah, they can take the demolition specialty. Right,
they can take the demo specialist, which makes it a little
every
bit
flamer
nicer.
just a little bit
nicer.
So.
Yep.
They can also take the Ossa Factor, which if you remember,
this
old
thing is
Bone
cool.
Pest, that's my favorite gun. So that's a 24-inch assault 1 weapon. It always wounds on a 2+, which is very good. It's a flat.
So it's
AP
like super
-3.
poison.
You're just worried about hitting at that point.
Yeah, basically. It's a flat -3 AP. It's just 1 damage, but if you do take a model out of action, each model within I want to say 2 inches. Yeah, 2 inches of the model takes a mortal wound on a 5+ if it's taken out of action. So if you have a bunch of things clumped around, you can divvy out potentially a bunch of mortal wounds if you roll hot.
If you watched our previous discussion video like this about orcs, you know that is a very common tactic for certain armies.
Yes, absolutely.
To clump up for morale mitigation is a very typical tactic for a lot of armies that are bringing a bunch of dudes.
Absolutely.
If you can find that clump, you know, maybe through a little bottleneck somewhere on the field and that Ossa Factor connects, and the rolls are nice, and you can get mortal wounds on every single one of those guys in the meat area.
Huge.
That's big.
Absolutely game defining.
And it may not be the most efficient pick, but it has the ability to make that hit that is so threatening that you may see some opponents start deviating their attention to this thing instead of maybe like your Dark Lance or something else in there that is bigger or meaner. Right?
Exactly.
Well, and here's the thing. You can make the rack with the Ossa Factor. You can make them a heavy specialist.
Yes. Heavy and demo are both options.
Yeah, and a demolition specialist is an option. So suddenly the sniper rifle variant actually can get quite dirty, whether ignoring the penalty for moving around with a heavy sniper rifle or the +1 to wound.
So my list, spoiler alert, includes a little bit of tech that I've discovered. If I'm wrong, let me know. But you take an Acothyst and you take him as a demo specialist and you give him the Hexrifle. And the Hexrifle can only go to the Acothyst, but it's 36-inch range. It's a sniper rifle, so it ignores long-range penalty.
Yep.
Boom.
And you're going to be shooting at things that are obscured anyway, so you're already going to get that -1. But because they're obscured, it says here if you roll a wound roll of a 6+, you do a mortal wound in addition, and it's already -1 AP and 1 damage. 6+ meaning I can modify this roll.
Oh, man.
So if you're obscured and I'm a demo, I'm giving you a mortal wound on a 5+.
Here it comes.
If I use custom ammo,
you're
getting a mortal wound.
Say it again.
One more time.
Yes.
4+.
Do it.
Woo! Mortal wound on a 4+.
So
he did that on camera.
And you're wounding.
Post
you're wounding
a
a lot
picture
of
of
things
that snapshot into the.
Me dabbing about a hex rifle. I hope none of my
really quick,
coworkers find this.
just to potentially rain on the parade.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I don't know.
Yeah.
And viewers who are savvy, please comment. We've actually been really having some great discussions both on Reddit and YouTube itself on different rules and stuff like that. So we really appreciate those. Let us know what you think. There's a lot of sniper rifle variants that have that same mortal wound on a roll of
6
blank. 6. And they FAQ'd that you do the mortal wound first. So then if that takes them to the injury roll, you discard anything else, and then you just do 1 injury roll.
Right.
So it could be good. Like the mortal wound on a 4+ would be great on like a 2 wound model. absolutely, no questions asked.
Sure.
But could be detrimental. What is the damage profile?
It's damage
on
1.
Damage
it's
1.
damage 1. Okay, so
it doesn't
ultimately
matter. It doesn't
inconsequential.
matter,
And here's what I was going to harp on in that moment is that a mortal wound is harder to save against than a standard wound. So the mortal wound is your little cherry on top to that damage that will negate a roll that usually someone will get. Not to say they couldn't have an invuln of some kind. We've talked about many other models that do have that.
But the mortal wound even snakes around the invuln.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, if you make this guy with this Hexrifle your demo specialist, you are, probably going to be 50-50 to hit. But once you do hit, the wound is, if you use that custom ammo strat, it's a 50-50 to do a mortal, or you're going to be wounding most things on 2+.
Right.
Which is really nice.
Which is real nice.
No, it's very good.
So,
harking back to the Ossa factor that you mentioned before, in your list you made him a heavy specialist, correct?
I did. Just because I didn't see, you can make him a demo specialist, but he's already wounding on a 2 with that weapon. Comms is not an option for Rax, I don't believe.
Because my only gripe, while it is nice that you can advance,
make him a medic maybe or a veteran.
Yeah, you could advance and shoot with the Ossa factor at that point, which is nice. You don't start with the -1, but you're never able to use the heavy tactic to get the extra shot because it's a single shot weapon.
Yeah,
I feel like in this case maybe a medic might be a solid choice.
Well, the way I was using the guy with the Ossa factor, and the last time I played with him, is you can move him, you can advance with him, so that's 7 plus d6 inches. You can still fire without penalty. You're already wounding on a 2, and then you can also fire and fade with him, so you can cheese a lot of movement out of that guy with a 24-inch range.
That's fair.
To put him on an objective, to get him out of combat. That's a big long move. That's 14 plus d6 inches, and you can almost hit anything with a 24-inch.
And to be
range.
fair, you're spending your CP on other stuff like lightning fast reflexes.
Right. I think the Drukhari specific
fade.
tactics are a little bit better than the specialist ones.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, I'd actually like to pause for a moment on the medic fact of the rack.
Yeah.
This is again, we keep dancing around this which haven't even touched on Homunculus Coven Obsessions yet.
Yeah.
But the thing, right? If you do an Alliance of Agony style build, you could make a rack your medic and then have him stim shotting
a witch.
So you could have a witch zealot and a rack medic, have him stim shot the witch.
Cool.
Now you've even buffed that even more.
Yeah.
So again, that's that thing of where it's and you might not necessarily want to build to ignore your obsessions, but there's a lot to be offered by building to.
And to be fair, you have a powerhouse of a melee unit in the Grotesque within the Covens already, so I mean that's another worthy stim shot target.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the Grotesque. So the Grotesque is a 7-inch move, 3+ weapon skill, 6+ ballistic skill. We don't care. He doesn't have any guns. He's strength 5. He's toughness 5. He's 4 wounds.
4 wounds is tremendous.
He's 4 attack space, leadership 8, 6+ armor save. Who cares because he has a 5+ invulnerable save from insensible to pain. His weapons, he's got the Monstrous Cleaver, which is strength user 5, AP -2, 1 damage. Each time he fights with the Monstrous Cleaver, he can make 1 additional attack. So each time you're swinging with the Cleaver, it's 5 attacks. It's strength 5, AP -2, 1 damage.
Gross.
Hello. You can also use his, what is it? Oh, I take it back. You can give them a liquefier gun. That's weird because that's only an index option in 40K.
Boom, baby, breaking the rules.
Okay.
Drukhari.
I don't know why. I wouldn't know why you want to give him a liquefier gun, but I
you
guess
can.
Why wouldn't you?
He also
What's his specialisms? We're just gonna get real weird.
Demo. He can take demo.
He can be a demo. Okay.
Boom.
All right.
That seems very strange, though. I feel like you just want to throw this guy in combat, but let me hear your argument.
Play it and throw it back in Tim's face.
Yeah, please do. He also has a
Please
monstrous.
do.
He also has a monstrous. No, we talked about monstrous cleaver. Sorry, he has a flesh gauntlet.
This is my
Yeah.
favorite named weapon for
Flesh gauntlet.
for specifically Drukhari.
So each time you roll a wound roll of a 6+ for this weapon, the target suffers a mortal wound in addition to any other damage. So I think this one is probably good for maybe your guys that have invuln saves or something like that. That you're not gonna the AP -2 isn't really gonna be worth it anyway.
Something like a
your Gene Stealers or something.
Yeah, Gene Stealers, or if someone has a Storm Shield, that
Right.
sort of stuff. Yeah.
Whoa, whoa. I feel targeted in that.
Hashtag triggered.
So where the mortal wounds will be useful. You do lose the extra attack, but you do get the option to do some
Did you
mortal
just say
wounds.
doo-doo?
I did.
I was gonna
So
twice, one video.
So I think
It's captured.
I think the
Jesus.
Grotesque is a must take if you're running a Coven's specific list. I think it's borderline a must take in any list. But I feel like he gets so much better with one of the particular obsessions.
Yeah.
That we can. I guess we can just.
So real quick,
I just want to ask the question: does he not have a damage to weapon profile?
He does not.
So the only melee
weapons are
option,
1 damage.
Well, I'm for Drukhari period that are 2 damages with the Hecatar, like the Ecotrix or
no,
the witches?
we did skip over it. So the Homunculus covens themselves have a lot of kind of weird melee weapons so that you can give them. The electro-corrosive whip is an agonizer with 2 damage. It's not bad.
But of course, Rax have less attacks. Than a witch.
Yeah.
They do, but 2 damage is
still really
I'll
good.
harp on it a lot. It is very, very relevant for being able to just get those. I mean, because that's where, if you're going to save a reroll for something, if you save it for that injury roll with 2 dice.
Yeah, the later, the longer you can save your injury rolls.
Yeah, the better.
Or your CP reroll for something, I mean, the better. Yeah.
You've seen plenty of videos. I'm a big fan of the CP reroll.
Yeah, it's your favorite tactic.
I use that tactic maybe 3 times a match, and it is almost always on the injury roll, and it is almost always to pull a model out of play.
Out of action,
yeah.
Some of us like nice thematic tactics and like have fun with the things. Some people just like to remove models.
Let's watch the world burn.
They also have the Mind Phase Gauntlet. The Mind Phase Gauntlet I think I gave to my leader last time. It's a strength user AP 0, but it's 2 damage as well, which is nice because I think it's very cheap. I think it's like a 1 or 2 point upgrade. It's right here. 1 point. So 1 point to get a 2 damage weapon, even if it's strength user.
That's not bad.
It's not bad.
Well, and their strength 3.
Their strength 3.
So again, like I said earlier, maybe strength 3 not as bad as you might think.
No.
And if you give it to someone like Acothyst, he's got 3 attacks. You're probably going to get a wound through. Scissor Hand, you can make an extra attack with that one. Always wounds on a 4+ AP -1 damage. Not bad.
So again, that's like a poison weapon.
And then your Venom Blade always wounds on a 2+, and that's a pretty cheap upgrade too. That's only a 1 point upgrade.
What is your top pick melee weapon off that table?
I would say the electro-corrosive whip. That's the most expensive at 3, but it's an agonizer with 2 damage. It's really, really good, especially on your Acothyst that has 3 attacks. After that, the Venom Blade I think is a pretty good one too because it's always wounding on 2s. And again, if you're forcing saves, if you're forcing those kind of rolls, eventually you're going to punch one through.
Well, and again, you have to remember that at round 3, your Drukhari are hitting on 2s. So with that one, you're hitting on 2s with 3 attacks on the Acothyst and then wounding on 2s. Yeah. So again,
reliability is huge.
It's so huge. Yeah. So let's talk obsessions.
Yeah. Yes. So we've got 3 for the Homunculus Coven. So I'm gonna skip over.
Why is it that Cabal get 4?
They're just cool like that.
They're just better, right? Isn't that just the answer? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Hashtag Cabal privilege.
Hashtag stumped.
So
stonks.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll save the best for last. So you have the Dark Creed, Distillers of Fear. So this is like the leadership bomb kind of tactic, right? The opponent takes a nerve test for a model. And that's important wording. For a model within their kill team, they must add 1 to the test result of each of your models, other than shaken models, that is within 3 inches of that model. So if you have a bunch of racks or whatever up in the face, within 3 inches of that model, that's a -1 modifier that's
for
compounded for each model.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting.
Does it have a cap?
It does not have a cap.
And that's
40K it has a cap. I think at -3, but it does have a cap.
And that's a fun situation too, because at that point it stacks with your turn 4 or 5 where you add another
power from pain.
Additional minus to leadership. So
which again, if you're playing a mission that has like, for example, breaking as a thing, maybe it doesn't necessarily the first time it comes into play doesn't necessarily change anything to their break rolls because it's just the nerve check. But then the next time if your half your models are shaken, yada yada yada.
Well,
so it could be very big.
So here's what you do. Here's the combo. You take an Alliance of Agony style list. So you have a Cyberite or Sybarite with a Phantasm grenade launcher that when it hits, it gives you -1 leadership. Then never mind. We can't do this because you can't take an obsession.
Take the obsession out.
Never mind.
Just about jump into that.
So -1 from the grenade launcher.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Doubling
wait,
back.
Actually, hold on. The grenade launcher, does it stack? because you can get one on a Cyberite, you can get one on a Witch.
You can't take a Cyberite with Obsession. With
No. I'm not talking about Obsession.
I see. You could get one from each of them. I don't know.
Does it stack? Can we pull that up really quick? Can you look? Does it say like
because it doesn't stack in 40K? It's a maximum -1.
Yeah, we might have found some weird tech here because if you take a Cyberite with a grenade launcher and you take a Witch with a grenade launcher, and can Rax take a Phantasm?
No, they can't.
So here's so it's just Cabal that can take it. If a model is hit by one or more Phantasm grenade launchers,
one or more. Okay, so that's it. That's it.
Yeah, that's it right there.
So yeah, because you can take one on a Cyberite, one on a Hecatrix.
Never mind, the dream is dead. Yeah. you can do that one 2 command point tactic where you kill their leader and then you reduce the whole army's leadership by 1, and then you get them next to a bunch of dark.
We're gonna stare at the camera real quick while you consider that choice and then realize what those 2 CP could have been used for.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this one. Next one you have Covenant of 12, really Butchers of Flesh. But this one basically just adds an additional -1 AP to all your melee attacks.
That's not bad. It's not bad considering that it takes an AP 0 weapon to AP -1.
Yeah, -1. Yeah. And then
AP 0 to AP -2.
Ooh, baby.
Math.
Strong.
Yeah.
Stonks.
Stonks. But yeah, I mean, it also makes the weapons we just went over all that more scary too.
Yeah.
Making an electro-corrosive whip a -3 is gross.
I'm gonna put my
stake your claim.
Yeah, I'm gonna stake my claim on this. So I actually really like the Distillers of Fear here because
Dark Creed.
Huh?
Dark Creed.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Specifically because the Homunculus Covens are known for sticking around. Right?
Yes.
Their toughness is
stonking
better.
Around.
Yeah, stonking around. Their toughness is better than most of the rest of the line here. Yeah. They have the highest chance of staying to round 4, round 5 in a long game.
Yes.
So in that situation, when you're trying to force those last couple points out, and again, like we were saying, mission dependent. We've played many missions where it comes down to 1 or 2 models worth of points.
Yep.
That little extra bit of leadership towards the end is backbreaking.
Yeah, well,
and there's only a couple armies that can negate that. You know what I mean?
Well, and a big part of that is that a shaken model cannot hold an objective.
Correct.
So if you force, like you're saying, if you're on turn 4, turn 5, you force a shake result on somebody that your opponent wasn't expecting. They're left out in the lurches.
How many of those missions have like scoring at the end of the game, right? Yeah. None of the scoring happens during it, so you're just trying to get to that end game. Yeah. So that could be critical there. Where you see the last remnants of their units are sitting around. You throw a couple racks in their area. All of a sudden, that leadership is stacking. They're failing rolls left and right, and you're winning off of that, which is pretty sweet. So,
unfortunately, as cute as these options sound, there's the Prophets of Flesh.
Boo.
Boo.
So the Prophets of Flesh, models in your kill team with the Insensible to Pain ability, which is every Homunculus Coven model, have an invulnerable save of 4+ rather than 5.
So,
unfortunately, this is the most boring one. Okay.
So
it's an easy button for sure.
In 40K,
but it's incredible.
In 40K, this is a great pick. In Kill Team, this is a great pick.
In 40K, it's.
Be real here.
They get all the best stuff.
Yeah.
They get Yuri and
They're
Rakarth.
They're the Tau Sept.
They're
the Tau Sept of
this. They get the
faction.
Ignore Overwatch relic.
Yes.
They get the D3 command points reload trade. Anyway,
there's a lot to be said for it in full 40K because in full 40K they have named characters, they have stratagems specifics, they have relics specific. Yeah. Now in Kill Team, they did future-proof all the obsessions that they're like if you have or any chapter tactic equivalent where it's like if you have that, then you can get that obsession or chapter tactic or whatever tactics. Yep. They have not released anything along those lines yet. Maybe we can look for that down the line. We'll see. But it's a bit of future-proofing.
Yeah.
But yes, in Kill Team, the 4-up invuln very good, but it is a little boring.
So it's boring, sure.
It's funny because
I'll wear that one.
I'd like to play against it, specifically with Deathwatch, and I'll pack on those what are those weapons called? The Xenophase blades.
Where you have
no. Well, that would be much better, but you force a reroll on a successful invuln save.
Okay, yeah.
So I mean, on a 4-up save, it's a 50% chance, right? So
4-up rerollable in the opposite
4-up
direction.
rerollable in the opposite direction. Just for the fun of it, I think that would be a really, really
would be hilarious.
enjoyable situation where you're like, yeah, man, I'm playing Prophets of Flesh. Got nothing to worry about. What's that sword doing over there?
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah.
Well,
zoom in on the face, like what?
It's
the
blink,
the blink gif,
or it's the dramatic groundhog or whatever. It's like,
I mean, it's good. Obviously, don't get me wrong. The way to beat it obviously is just with weight of 5.
Weight of dice.
Just so many Xenophase.
Weight of Xenophase blades.
Weight of Xenophase blades. But yeah, I mean, it's still a 50-50 chance. So if you just force a bunch of wounds on them, you know, AP doesn't matter at that point.
But
you just force.
You say it's a 50-50 chance. What's the save? I'm not going to flip over to it. What's the save on a rack?
A 5+ involved.
And then what's the save on a grotesque?
They all have the 5+ invulnerable.
No, but he's
save.
talking about the base save.
Save profile, not the
6+.
6
plus
grotesque.
Armor. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What am I thinking of that has like 3+?
I don't know.
I don't know. You know what? Ignore me.
Yeah.
You know what?
So here's the thing though, right? So like
You're thinking of Talos probably.
What you're
I am thinking of Talos. You're right. When are they going to be in here?
What you should be worried about.
Support, yeah.
What you should be worried about here is that it is a T5 a grotesque.
Yeah.
T5 model, hurdle number 1. 4-up invuln, hurdle number 2. 6-up feel no pain, hurdle number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to get through 3 separate hurdles just to remove a wound. And this guy has 4 wounds, man.
Yeah. 4 wounds is gross.
I mean, in what else besides a commander? The majority of things that I can think of that are in the Elites edition are 3 wounds.
Yeah.
Right? You have, or even before that, you have warriors with 3 wounds, crisis suits. Alaris Terminators are 4 wounds? Yeah, but you only get one of those.
Yeah.
You
only get one grotesque.
You could take,
really.
Well,
no,
you could
take up to
at
3,
125-point list. You could take 3.
You could take 3. Yeah.
Well, and this is what I was saying earlier, going all the way back to the Cabal discussion about that niche of the high damage single shot weapon, because a strength 8 Dark Lance to a grotesque actually still has a decent chance of taking him out. Just boom,
absolutely.
One shot.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is where you don't want to knock your meltas, your fusions, any equivalent that's a D6 damage, because yes, the frag cannon is good at a flat 2 damage, but you still have to get 2 of those through to kill a grotesque. If you can connect with that one sweet Dark Lance.
Yeah. So the one thing I'm just gonna say,
about all your hopes and dreams.
Yeah,
that is grotesque.
The guy who's hosting this episode says the one thing I'm gonna say.
The one thing. Cut everything else out.
There is a stratagem that came out in Slicing News called Hunt from the Shadows. It's 1 command point.
That is reprinted in the Elites book. I will say that.
Yeah, that particular one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like 99%.
No, you're
sure.
talking about
I'll
the
flip.
deep,
Go ahead.
You're talking
go
about
ahead.
the deep strike one.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
But anyway, so it's use this tactic when a model from your kill team is chosen as the target of an enemy attack in the shooting phase, and it is obscured until the end of the phase. Add 1 to that model's saving throws. It doesn't say armor save. Yeah. It says saving throws.
It doesn't even say add 1 to the minus modifiers.
So from Out of the Shadows, that's the deep strike. This is called Hunt from the Shadows.
Yeah, this is from the...
Now, guys,
Shadows.
So here's what you
shadows.
do. You take your Prophets of Flesh grotesque. You run him to the middle of the board behind some cover.
Doesn't matter.
They shoot at him because he's the biggest threat. You use this 1 CP strat, and all of a sudden he has a 3+ invulnerable save.
Gross.
And then you just spend another command point and you give him lightning fast reactions, because they haven't FAQ'd it yet to say Homunculus Covens can't use lightning fast reactions like they can't in 40k.
And then you poop on this with a smart missile system as a Tau player, because it ignores obscurement.
That's fine.
All right.
In that one instance,
in
that one instance, it's good. In every other instance, you have a -2. Maybe -3 to be hit thing with a 3+ invulnerable save sitting
at toughness.
Toughness 5.
So I'd like to talk about the wording on this one too, because specifically giving you the +1 to the model's saving throws is strictly better than Lurk, which is the Tyranid version that just gives you an additional -1 to be hit if you're already obscured. So if there's ignorement of that obscurement or something to that effect, you're losing everything. You don't get any of the minuses. Yeah. This one you're still getting the oh no, I guess if they ignore the obscurement you don't get the +1 either, but at least you still retain your 4-up invuln, right?
Yes.
So Although I will have to look back. Now that I'm thinking about it, like Auspexes and stuff like that ignore obscurement. Yeah. I don't think it removes obscurement from the model that is obscured. It just you don't get the -1 to it, right?
It's really
poorly worded.
Important how to look at the wording. Like for example, I know with commandos, it's that commandos benefit from an additional -1 for being obscured. And then so any ability that ignores any penalties for obscurement then ignores their additional.
So lurk works the same way, where you would get an additional if you are obscured.
Yeah, so if it says additional, then so something like an Auspex or an Omnispex or Specs all ignores that.
Fortunately, you don't have to burn that tactic until you're being shot at something that is
what you said
obscured.
Reactionary reactionary play.
But so I guess this is where I was going with now that I read the wording of it. So for an Omnispecs or an Auspex specifically, if the model does not suffer penalties to their hit or injury rolls due to the target being obscured, that's relevant because this is the thing that gets around it by still granting you that +1 to save regardless. Right? Because they're just ignoring the hit or injury rolls.
Because the model firing is not suffering.
And you're still obscured.
Yeah. It's that the model being fired at is having a boon.
Right.
So it's a very good strat.
Any other big thoughts about Homunculus? We have one little small section to cover before we're done.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
All right.
They're the best.
Last thing to cover before we're done. Blades for Hire.
Yeah. And we're back. We're going to close out the video with a discussion of the Blades for Hire.
Blades for Hire. Hire.
Yeah. Nick? So these guys, as we kind of touched on before, they don't benefit from the obsessions, but they also don't take it away either. So if you want to play a pure Cabal, Witch Cult, or Coven detachment, you totally can.
Field.
Yeah,
they're going to allow you to build that roster.
Yeah. So the Incubi, they are probably the closest thing to an aspect warrior that the Drukhari have.
Now, confession time. The Incubi for me are actually, I only picked the Witch Cult for our discussion because Incubi don't have a trait or anything like that. Because Incubi are my favorite of the Dark Eldar models.
Okay.
There you go.
I know you've said that before when we've played. We'll see. I think they are pretty good in kill team. So let's talk about them. They have
plus their new sculpts are beautiful.
Yeah. Oh God, new models just released. Oh, yeah. I almost want to just buy a unit just to have.
You should, and then play them in front of Tim, and then be like, look at what you.
Look how good these guys are.
I could make an Incubi kill team.
There you go. All Incubi all the time, baby. Yeah. So they have a 7-inch move, of course, weapon skill, ballistic skill 3. Even though the ballistic skill doesn't matter, they have no guns. Though back in the day, they used to have
hearts. They do.
Yeah, back in the day, they used to have guns on their hats.
Yes,
it came up
that's
like this.
What's so awesome.
Hey, don't knock it. Striking Scorpions have guns on their cheeks.
Yeah, gun hat.
Love it.
Bring back the gun hat. So, strength 3, toughness 3, 1 wound, 3 attacks, which is pretty good. Base leadership 8 for your normal Incubus, and
which is damn good.
Which is real
damn
good.
Good leadership.
And then a 3+ save, which is the best armor save you're gonna get.
Yeah.
In the Drukhari book.
3+ save backed by a 6-up. Feel no pain because Incubus get power from pain too, baby.
Yep.
They do for some reason.
The Clavex, is awesome because he gets a few extra little bonuses as the sergeant. He gets an extra wound.
Yes.
He gets an extra attack, 4
Good
attacks.
for him.
Yes.
He's leadership 9.
Yes.
And he gets lethal precision.
My man.
Add 2 to the damage characteristic of a close combat attack made by a Clavex if the wound roll for the attack is a 6+.
Say what?
If you haven't figured it out yet, the more beers we get into this, the better hype we get about really nonsensical, semi-good things.
Man, I'm
imagine we talked about Grot's last. In
I am all in on the Incubus right now.
They're good.
They're a great band.
Yeah. I do really like Incubus, the band. They also have
favorite song from Incubus.
Oh man, Crowded Elevator, which is actually a
he had an answer.
Pick.
Okay. Okay. He's got to prove.
I was just listening to that song today. Actually, they're actually like one of my
fan.
favorite bands of all time. But yeah, anyway,
didn't put any in his list.
That notwithstanding,
weird.
Yeah. Well, they have the Tormentor's ability. Your opponents must add 1 to nerve tests taken for models within 3 inches of any enemy models with this ability, which is just flat better than it is in 40K.
Boom, and that can stack with power from pain.
Yeah.
You also skipped over the other ability because we interrupted you.
What's that?
The extra damage
I think I got through it. You guys,
I think you
make
said
we
it.
definitely talked over.
No.
You
He
roll.
said it. I was just hyping it up big.
You
I
roll a
wasn't
wound
paying
roll for a
attention.
6 on your Clavex. You get an additional 2 damage, so 3 damage.
Very strong.
The weapons on the Incubi is a clave.
Yep.
That is a flat +1 damage and -3 AP. Sorry, +1 strength, -3 AP.
I'll allow it.
1 damage. The Clavex.
But the Clavex has the on the 6.
Actually,
the damage,
I don't.
No, it's just the Clavex who gets it.
I
The
don't think the
Incubus doesn't get
Clavex
it.
in Kill Team can take Demiclaves.
Oh,
They
like
can't.
the split weapons,
split
like how
weapon.
Drazar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
can in 40k, but they can't kill them.
No,
That's fine. So +1 strength. So strength 4 base when you're swinging with your Incubi or your Clavex. AP -3, which is huge, and then 1 damage if you're Clavex. If you wound on a 6, it's 3 damage.
So
I
this,
love it.
One of the things I really like doing, and you'll notice in the roster that I put down there, specifically for these guys, the mercenaries, they're going to fill out a lot of your roster.
Yeah.
Just because they're takes for any of the lists, any of the 3
Oh, yeah.
factions that we've talked about, they're useful. Specifically, I would value the Clavex far above the Incubus.
Definitely.
And I would say because it can be taken as a leader, it gives you that flexibility for an option. Although, to be fair, you very rarely want to put your leader into combat scenarios. Just
Well, except for the fact that interestingly enough, the level 1 leader tactic is the lead by example, where you fight with your leader and then immediately
then
fight
you
with
can
somebody
pass it to another.
else.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
it is one of those sort
It's
of
risky.
like, yeah, it depends on
Yeah.
what you're doing with your leader, because if
They
you
could
have,
decide.
for example, a Gretchen leader, my man, then you don't want to put him in combat. But if you make an Incubus your leader, then you do want to put him in combat and leverage the leader tactic.
Yeah.
Just be wary of your opponent keeping up 2 CP for decisive strike. That can definitely eke you out of a bad and so. But what I'm saying here is what I like to do when I'm building a roster is I see a highlight unit like that Clavex, I can get to damage 3 off of that 6 up to wound. That's real nice. So I'll take that as its leader role, just in the off chance I want to play it, and I'll take it as a specialist, so that way I have flexibility.
Yeah.
Because I know if I'm going to take something else as a leader, I can then still always have that Clavex as an option as a really, really strong Zealot or combat specialist.
Yeah,
Probably
I 100%
better,
agree.
and I would argue probably better than most of the witch options.
Yeah. I personally.
Yeah,
Makes me
I
real
said it.
uncomfortable.
The leader being a combat powerhouse makes me a little nervous, because I always like to play them a little bit further back. I think actually I like the Clavex best as a Zealot, because then you're swinging on a charge, strength 5, AP -3, 5 attacks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's gross.
and then potentially,
Potentially got that exploding
that
6
damage
stratagem
three.
too, or
And-
tactic.
and we've shown it in a couple of our videos. With any of these models that have the potential to get extra damage off of the wound, if you're playing for fun, just roll it all together. You know.
Yeah.
But you can.
but you can't roll it single.
If
you're
if
trying
I
to eke out the
if
effectiveness.
I rolled all, and we've seen it before with Toxin Sacks, if I roll all 5 of my attacks and all 5 hit, I roll all 5 to wound, and I get 3 6s in there, but 2 of them are not 6s, but they're still wounds. Matt or Tim can be like, well, I'm gonna try to save one of those non-6s first, and if they fail it,
Actually,
the rest get shuffled aside.
I want to take a
So-
moment. I'll probably leave this in, which is why I'm saying it now. I've thought about it before I started speaking here.
Nope.
But
cut it.
so it's interesting because they FAQ'd All Is Dust.
Yeah.
That it still works with an effect like Toxin Sacks. So
Really?
and they actually use Toxin Sacks
Yeah.
as the example. So if you have Toxin Sacks
And it goes to
and
damage
you roll a
2.
6, so it makes it damage 2, I still get All Is Dust, so I still get +1 save.
Oh wow.
But in the instance when we played, that triggered against my aspiring sorcerer, who does not have all his dust because he's not a rubric marine or rubric.
And this
marine
wouldn't
gunner.
matter because this
G-
is AP -3, so it goes to your invul anyway as a
Yes.
Yeah.
So
GW.
it's super important.
No. All his dust buffs the invuln save as well, doesn't it?
Debatable. I've gotten some feedback that
I
it
believe
doesn't.
In 40K it does.
But okay, so in 40K it 100% does.
Yeah.
In 40K, yes. In Kill Team, it's a little unclear, to be perfectly honest. I saw it in a certain area,
So
but
this
then
is-
it doesn't necessarily make sense because of the other wording.
This
but
is
hey!
this is a great discussion for another situation.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
In this case, I would recommend if you're fishing for those 3 damage wounds, do roll one at a time.
Yes, absolutely. Because if you get the first one, and then
that
you get
3 damage is it's not guaranteed, but boy is it so very close.
I will say if you have a CP,
you use it on that.
If you have a CP and you haven't CP rerolled and you have a 3 damage weapon, it's all but guaranteed because the odds are so small to not roll a 4 up
5
on
or 6
die.
Yeah. And there's no intervening cover here, so 4 will be that out of action. Yeah. So
now, just of note, the Clavex is 16 points, so that's basically double the cost of a witch.
But look at every other kill team. 16 points is a Marine.
Yeah, fair.
You know, with an extra.
And he does have 2 wounds, so he basically is, kind of 2 models in
2
one.
wounds is important.
Nice.
2 wounds relevant.
Okay, so that's
Mandrakes
Incubus. Yeah. So Mandrakes, they are. I like the Mandrakes a little bit more just because they have a bit of a combination of shooting and melee.
These are my favorite.
And their shooting does mortal wounds.
It does. So they have an 8-inch move. Their strength 4 base, toughness 3, 3 attacks for the basic Mandrake, 4 for the Nightfiend, leadership 7, leadership 8 for the Sergeant, 7+ save. Ha! That's why they have a invulnerable save called Shrouded from Sight. Gives them a 5+ invuln. Also, they get a subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target this model. That is shooting and combat. So
it's them
that
and
is
stealth
worth
suits.
And
That's
then
what makes
they
it valuable.
get Mandrakes
they
the
get
1
from the
CP
shadow,
from the shadow where they get to like deep strike.
Deep strike in
So
up to
this
3.
is
Anywhere on the board. So important,
more than 5 inches away.
Yeah, important to note. Kill Team with the Elites expansion has brought in the reserves stuff. So if you come in from reserves for no CP, you can come in your deployment zone within an inch from board edge. For 1 CP, you can come in anywhere on the board within an inch of the board edge and outside of 5 from enemy models. And then certain factions have 1 CP stratagems for specific units to come in anywhere on the board outside of 5. Mandrakes get that here from the shadows.
They are 12 points.
12 points piece, 13 for the Nightfiend. So for 1 extra point, you get 1 extra leadership and 1 extra attack, which is not bad.
And again, the Nightfiend I would treat like the Clavex, where you can take it as a leader.
Yeah, you can.
Which is great because it's still a 1-wound model, right?
It is.
It's a 1-wound model,
but it has a standard minus 1.
But it has a
to hit.
standard -1. It's actually a very small model by comparison.
Yeah.
It's easier
you
to
put him
hide.
at long range and obscured, and his -1. You get a -3 to hit.
Now, to be fair, the model itself is probably not the easiest to find. I think metal and resin are your 2 options.
They're metal. They're fine cast or they're metal.
So
if you want to get them, you're gonna have to. I would recommend hunting for the metal. I have both metal and resin Mandrakes, and the metal are much easier to work with.
Far more durable.
Until they are able to make them into plastic, which GW is showing that they are making efforts
to
convert
on
the Eldar line gradually to all plastic. I would go for the metal models if you can find them, though they are significantly pricier. Through most outlets, so you can find them.
You probably could make some pretty cool kit bashes with some extra witch parts and some incubi parts, like for their swords.
Yeah,
a lot of the
definitely.
Ideneth Deepkin stuff and AOS actually makes for pretty good Mandrake conversion.
Yeah, so that might be a fun little thing.
Can you spin us a tale? What's the now Incubus? Like you said, are like an aspect warrior for our Eldar. What are a Mandrake in the fluff? What's a Mandrake?
What's a rapper?
Magnets.
My Mandrake.
How do they work?
So they, I believe they're kind of lost in Aelendrak, which is the Shadow Realm, and they are believed to be Yes.
Insert Yu-Gi-Oh meme.
Are you telling?
I love all this.
Are you telling me in 40K these guys have a Shadow Realm?
They sure do. So they kind of blink.
So I'm sorry to interrupt again.
You asked.
normal realm where everything takes place.
Yeah.
The warp.
Yeah.
The webway.
Right.
And then somewhere
There's
in between the webway and the warp is a Shadow Realm.
I'll just read it straight from the book. Here we go. When the tightest defenses must be penetrated, the shadowy mandrakes of Aelendrak are the secret weapon of many a Drukhari Archon. So inhabitants of a Shattered Nether Realm can emerge from pools of shadow at will, creep through reflective surfaces, hurling blasts of freezing balefire.
If you're hearing any Linkin Park in the background as he reads this, it's for good reason. So
I think I remember hearing that they're like
doesn't even matter.
they're like the souls of damned Drukhari that never like really got to escape, and they sort of went to the Shadow Realm. I don't know. They're weird, shadowy things.
Okay.
Look, don't get into a duel with an Archon. You will go to the Shadow Realm.
Yeah.
Exodia is a real thing.
You activated my trap card.
So
yeah.
We've gotten all our jokes out that regard Shadow Realm.
Okay.
So back to Mandrakes.
So they have the Bale Blast. That's what they're all equipped with. That's
really good.
Yeah. So it is an Assault 2 weapon. It's 18-inch range, and it is Strength 4. It's AP -1, and it does a mortal wound in addition
on a
wound roll of 6+.
Woo.
Yeah.
6+.
6+. So at 9 inches, you're not getting a minus to hit, which is pretty good.
So I just want to focus on that 6+ really quick.
Yeah.
Because it's not unmodified rolls of 6. It's 6+. Now, is there, to your knowledge, any tricks or whatever to give a plus to wound?
No, unless you can make them a demo, which you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ultimately, that is, again, just a case of future-proofing of
to talk
potentially.
About there's specialisms here, too. They are primarily melee choices. You have combat, veteran, zealot, and scout. Leader is an option for the Nightfiend specifically.
Yeah. I mean, the leader Nightfiend actually, I think, is a really good pick, like you said, because he's got a base -1 all the time.
Yeah.
Then if you keep him at long range, which he's still pretty effective, he's an 18-inch Bale Blast.
Yeah.
So if you keep him, you float him around the 18-inch range. That's outside of rapid fire for most things.
Yep.
And then you
it's
keep
an
him
assault.
obscured, so you got a -3 to hit on this guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's pretty big.
Yeah, and then if he does get into melee, which will happen, remember melee, Mandrakes have a base strength of 4.
Yeah,
and they have the Glimmer Steel Blade, which is strength user, so strength 4, AP -1 damage. And the Nightfiend has 4 attacks. So that's 4 attacks, strength 4, AP -1. That's
so does their -1 to hit?
Yeah, it's
in
all
combat.
the time.
It's all the time. It's all the time.
That's great. They are a stealth suit effectively with that regard.
And you can lightning fast reactions them in shooting or in combat.
Right,
so you can stack them. You can stack them up to a -2 before they even get obscurement bonuses or anything.
So that's really huge. Actually, Mandrake, if you're going for something like an all Cabal list or an all Covens list, a Mandrake leader actually could be huge because you
that's
could stack
exactly
them.
what I have in mind. I have a Nightfiend leader in my Covens
There you
list.
go.
I put that in my roster as well.
So you could have a -4 to hit with lightning fast
just
reactions.
for 1 CP.
Yeah, for 1 CP. And then even in combat, and that's a guy that you don't mind getting into combat, honestly, because he's got a base -1 in combat, and -2 if you use the lightning fast reactions, and then he's going to carve up whatever he's hitting with 4 attacks.
And the really interesting thing with them too is that deep strike stratagem. So Mandrakes being 12 points a model, over Incubus, I put 2 Mandrakes into my roster specifically for that because I know I'm going to be playing a Nightfiend, either as a leader or as a specialist, one of the two.
It's only 1 point more.
As a combat specialist, he's great. 5 attacks. He's pumping out mortal wounds potentially off his 18-inch Assault 2, so he doesn't even need to be within rapid fire range, just max range. He fits the role of Drukhari better than most of the models that do obtain obsessions because he is a great shooter. He is a great combat, and he's evasive. He's tricksy, right? So,
and I'd like
make a list of all Mandrakes and
absolutely
do pretty well.
I want to point out too with the from Out of the Shadows strat, and this is how a lot of the strats like that for the outflank style strats is that it's up to 3 Mandrakes. So if you have 3 Mandrakes in your list, 1 CP, all of them get to drop down outside of 5 inches, where instead of outflank where it's 1 model for 1 CP for the from Out of the Shadows, you get 3 Mandrakes for 1 CP.
And tactically speaking, the relevance of that is huge because there's no limitation to turns. You can do it on turn 1 if you want to. So all it takes is you lose initiative on turn 1, right? You're on the downside because they've already advanced very heavily into your direction, but it's an objective-based game, or they've left one of their very vulnerable things in the back line. You drop 2 Mandrakes and a Nightfiend back there for 1 CP. All of a sudden, you're pumping out 6 shots, potential mortal wounds. If that fails, you can charge in. They got an intrinsic -1 on top of that. Like they're an excellent counterpunch.
Oh yeah. Well, and if your opponent has readied models expecting something or whatever,
get up in that.
and then suddenly you've massively changed their target priority.
Yeah, because it's at the end of the movement phase too. So after charges have been declared and stuff like that. Too.
Right.
I mean, I rate them. I probably rate them the highest among the Elite's choices.
Yeah. How many models for again? I'm sorry. I mean, how many points for
12
a model?
for
12 and then 13. That's great.
It's
that's
dirt
great.
cheap. Dirt cheap. They're 1-wound models. You can lose it off some bad rolls.
Yeah.
Of course. But that's like 99% of kill
Dark
team.
Eldar anyway,
yeah.
with high movement and evasiveness and stuff
Yeah,
like
because
that.
their movement's 8.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
So let's kind of wrap it up and talk about Dark Eldar as a whole, what they do well, and how to beat them, because we all want to know how to beat everybody.
Right.
Win.
Yeah.
Because winning's fun.
Or just how to win as Drukhari, because there's a lot of matchups that I don't think are great for them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the big one, right? So, funnily enough, a low toughness army with a bunch of models is not really the best matchup for them. So the mirror match might actually not be a very fun situation.
Yeah.
Because you're both wounding inefficiently. You know, but I think their strong suit is that they have the flexibility in having threats at various stages, not psychic, but you can splice in some incubi, you can splice in some mandrakes, you can if you built a roster that's efficient enough, you could have the potential to be like, oh well, the cabals aren't really going to do a whole lot in this. Maybe I'll make, take all these models, make myself a little coven list. It'll be more durable to last to the end game. That kind of scenario, That's where I think the beauty of this army lies, and their strongest suit is in that Alliance of Agony
kind of flexibility,
because they still have power from pain. They can forego the obsession and play a hyper variable roster. And I mean, it's going to be tight. When I was trying to build one for this, I wasn't able to get one in time, but I would imagine building 3 separate lists, one for Cabal, one for Covens, one for Witches.
And then fit that into a roster somehow.
And fit that into a roster. And the way you do that is by having overlap with the mercenaries. You play a couple Mandrakes, couple Incubi. That gives you that points overlaps to kind of get there. You may not be able to squeeze in more than one Grotesque. Yeah. But, overall your roster will be nicely tuned to kind of fit whatever the need is as you go.
Yeah, I agree.
And it might be a great way to build too. Points wise, I mean, if you're shopping off eBay, pick up a couple models here and there. Yeah. So.
Ways to beat them, just that I've seen personally, is just touch them for the most part. Once you get into combat with them, especially Cabal, they're just going to fall over. I mean, we talked a lot about the 6+ ignore wounds from the top, but you'd be surprised how little that really comes into play over the course of a game.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the 6+ to ignore wounds feels completely ineffectual until it's effectual. Right. Until it ignores that particular wound to keep you alive. That's when it matters.
As a Leviathan player for Tyranids, I can attest to the fact that there have been many moments where that single 6+ just feels so good.
That one 6+ changes it. I would agree. If you're going up against a Cabal or even a Homunculus Coven list, you want to get into combat. Now against Witches,
shoot them.
You better you want to go the opposite way. You want to shoot them
high ground.
Yeah, because in combat they're going to get a 4-up invuln, whereas in shooting they only have the 6-up base, no invuln.
If you're playing Marines, a standard bolt rifle from a Primaris model, that's going to pick off a model very quickly. So.
Yeah, strength for anything really will deal with them, unless you get to Covens. And Covens, we kind of talked about the way to deal with them is just way to fire.
Yeah,
you're going to force that invulnerable save regardless. Don't bother on anything that's high AP because it's not going to matter. But once you start forcing saves, they're going to start failing them. And then a Coven-centric list is going to have almost half the models of like a Cabal-centric list.
Yeah.
Because your Cabal list had like around 13 or something like that.
So
I think the Coven list.
My normal Cabal list, which no elite models included, was about 13 models, which is that's more than anything I've played with, even for like Tyranids and stuff like that. So it's a lot to work with. But as you bring in elites, you start to reduce the model count. I would say on average, if you're going to build an elite list for at either 100 or 125 points, you're probably going to be rounding about 10 to 12 models total, which is solid. That's, half your team has to go before you start making checks. And usually by that point, it's turn 4 and you're, re-rolling those nerve checks anyways. So,
well, and that's the thing, I think, both how to be successful with Dark Eldar and then how to beat Dark Eldar is that you want to do it quickly because every turn that goes on, the Dark Eldar get more powerful.
Yeah,
correct.
And so you want to either cut the legs out from under them early
Right.
Like we're talking like turn 2, you want to decide the match right then and there.
Yeah.
Because if you let them go on, they're going to sneak up and surprise you. So if it's like if you are playing against Dark Eldar and you are like, "Oh, I'll just play for turn 4." You're getting a little risky.
Well, that's the
only
thing.
because they're gonna each model is gonna get more powerful on turn 4, and they might sneak up and surprise you.
Here's my take, following up on what you said right there. If you're banking on turn 4, usually the end of the game, winning off of lack of morale, that they're gonna surprise you in that regard because they have that reroll at that point. My recommendation when you're targeting a Drukhari army or a kill team, take out the sergeant models, the Clavex, the Nightfiend, the etc. They have the better leadership, so you're already helping out in that regard. But to the same effect, they're the ones who can take the more powerful weapons over the standard version.
Yeah, that's the thing I was going to say too. Is just the way the army is set up. There's going to be max 2 guys of each type of subfaction that are able to take the
special
cool weapons.
And
then everything else is going to be pretty lackluster, honestly. I mean, you can get the job done with just a basic Cabalite warrior, but if you take that Splinter Cannon out and that blaster out, then all of a sudden, as someone who's had that done to them, as a Drukhari player, it's like, oh well, now what do I do?
And that's I think that holds true for the majority of kill team in general. When I'm looking at an opponent army, I'm factoring in how important is the leader to this, how important is the CP usage, and that'll usually determine whether or not I'm gunning for their leader first. In this case, depending on the leader, I think when they choose a Nightfiend as a leader, I'm no longer targeting the leader as a first choice. I'm going for a specialist.
Start rethinking it.
Yeah. So,
I think for me, actually, that's been the real. Obviously I've spent some time thinking about Dark Eldar in preparation for this, but I didn't really think about the Nightfiend as a leader. I didn't really rate it until we've had the discussion, and then now realizing that it's like in shooting, you can get a base -4 to hit, and then even in combat, you can get a -2 to hit just for 1 CP, and it's like... So, I mean, you could even take your leader. Again, you're looking to leverage that lead by example tactic. You charge your Nightfiend in. You fight with him. You use lead by example to jump the turn order to let someone else fight. And then when you're getting targeted, when your Nightfiend is getting targeted, you spend your other CP to lightning fast reflex to give him a -2. Against a standard like Marine, 3 up to hit, you're hitting on 5s all of a sudden.
And on top of that,
huge.
Next turn, spend that 1 CP, fall back and shoot.
There it is.
It's funny because when we were doing the orc video, we were like, all Grot army sounds pretty good. All Mandrake armies, not a bad
like
play here.
Featuring Mandrakes
still get power from pain.
Dang strong.
Still get power from pain.
Who needs obsessions?
Yeah. I mean, well, but I think that's the like ultimate strength of it, is that you can feature the Mandrakes in your list heavily, and then just have whether you want to shore up melee or
shooting
sustainability with witches or homunculus, or shooting with cabal, you can do that and still benefit from the obsession.
Buy the Mandrakes.
How many come in a kit?
Somehow.
5?
5.
Okay. So 5 right there, assuming one is a Nightfiend, that's going to be 13 points plus another 12 times 4.
61,
so we're looking. Yeah. So that leaves you, and if the average Cabalite is 7 points a model,
8 points,
and they're great chaff. Like, I think out of all of the models in here, Cabalites make for the best chaff. 7 points a model.
Definitely in
range,
points efficiency.
Yeah. Like, you fill the rest with Cabalites, maybe a special weapon here or there, like a shredder or something like that.
Yeah.
You got a pretty mean list.
Yeah. Well, and then again, if you're using your Mandrake as your leader, then that frees up your Cabalite. What's the sergeant for Cabalites?
Sybarite.
Sabaro
pizza.
Sabarite. It frees. But it frees them up for something like a combat or Zealot specialist or veteran with the Agonizer, and you can put them as a close combat focus and move them up. So you can get some really interesting plays with the Dark Eldar here.
Do you have we talked a lot about how to beat Drukhari. We talked a lot about the strengths of Drukhari. Do you have a recommendation for, as a Drukhari player, what has led you to the most success with your managing your list on the tabletop? So not so much building the list, but actually moving them around the board. Because I know you harped a little bit earlier on that lone Dark Lance guy sitting atop a building.
Yeah,
but
you felt that the Dark Lance wasn't.
But
super
we've
effectual.
seen from other matchups, like that heavy Venom cannon or the Venom cannon off of a Tyranid, gunner sitting at the top of something that closes off a lot of routes.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've noticed from playing the spread of it that is something that you think maybe a new player might miss?
Just keep the mobility in mind, I would say would be my main thing. And that's why I kind of don't really favor the Dark Lance, is because I think it kind of subconsciously limits your mobility because you are taking the -1 when you move. 7-inch mobility makes a big difference. 8-inch mobility for witches makes a big difference.
Yeah.
When I played Drukhari, especially when I played Cabals and stuff like that, which is sort of what I started with, I liked to move them all as a unit in a pocket, in a little firing group, and fire things off. And then once you start to get that power from pain bonus and you can reroll charges, you can hit on 2s, then you can start moving out and picking things off in melee. You're going to get into melee and kill team. It's just going to happen from the nature of the map and everything like that. So if you can play into that, move around as sort of a mobile fire base, and then start to pick things off in melee at the end, I think that's probably the best way to learn how to play them. You should never leave a Cabalite Warrior or any Drukhari unit, I would say, out in the open. They should always try to be behind some kind of obscurement, because at the end of the day, you are fragile. The toughness 3 is what's going to hurt you the most. The 6-up ignore wounds thing is nice, but like I said, the times that it's come into play are much more less often than the times that it has. So leverage your shooting to a point, and then move in and kind of finish things off. And like I said, it sort of just dawned on me while we were talking about it, but the ability of the army to force a lot of flesh wounds in the early game to make your opponents weaker and then sort of pick them off is not only thematic, but really plays into what the army is good at.
And what they're good at.
So if you can get a bunch of flesh wounds on things and effectively neuter their strength, and then you can prey on that and finish them off, that's a lot better than going for the kill, I think, for the Drukhari than it would be for other armies.
To hark on that, too, flesh wounds people, at least we mitigate a bit because we played things that ignore it, like Leviathan or transhuman physiology and stuff like that. But it's still a -1. That's one more -1 on top.
That makes that it affects your nerve checks and all that.
That makes that Nightfiend just that much harder to hit.
It counts towards your break checks. The flesh wounds are big.
Yeah.
So
I mean, never. Yeah, there's a weird line to walk between focusing on taking a model out and then spreading flesh wounds around to start forcing break checks.
Yeah. So it's a definitely different way of thinking when you're playing the game, but really try to. I think as we play the game more often, you begin to realize how much thought has really been put into the play testing and make the armies seem very thematic, thematic. And if you can play them up to the way you think they're supposed to be played thematically like that, which for the Drukhari is to make things suffer, to put it in the most simplest terms, you're going to find the most success, I think, playing them like that.
That doesn't mean be a tryhard.
Right.
Just means make the suffering happen. But exactly. I'm glad that you admit that my list is the best one.
Any other big thoughts, guys?
I think that's it.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Pick yourself up a box of Cabalite Warriors or Witches or Racks at your nearest
Support your local
store.
GW store.
Yeah. That's it. And guys, we really hope that you've enjoyed this.
We know enjoyed it a lot.
It's been a long discussion. If you have any big insights on Drukhari or any questions, if you feel like we didn't flesh anything out enough for you, let us know in the comments below. I'll make sure these two guys see anything that you put down there.
I've received text messages close to midnight.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh my God, we got a comment about this one rule you messed up.
Can you please go address this? So I'll make sure they see it. So let us know in the comments what you think. If you have any insights that we missed, that you think we missed about Dark Eldar, playing them or beating them. Of course, if you like these type of videos, hit that like button.
Smash that like.
Smash it.
To follow up on that, we definitely like doing these videos, like you just said. If you have another army that you would like to see us do, please let us know. We play a pretty varied amount of armies at this point.
Pretty wide variety,
But there's nothing saying we couldn't research and do work into something that you really want to hear about.
Yeah.
So please let us know. Hit us up on Reddit. Hit us up on YouTube. either of the two and give us some ideas as to what we can do another one of these videos about, because we really, really enjoy doing them. Yeah. And it sounds like you guys do too. So
yes. So, and the last thing is, of course, if you want to see more videos like this or any of our battle reports in your feed every week, make sure to hit subscribe. You can do so. It's going to be right over there. You can hit that button right now. Right here. All right. If you want to see our last sort of faction-focused video, I'm going to put it right over here. You can hit that and check that out. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next Warhammer Wednesday.
See you next time.